So you feel like after the mass deplatforming in 2021, whenever people on the right got pushed to platforms like Parler, Gab, Rumble, etc., the lack of discourse and like the political singularity of those platforms created more extremism?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Something needs to be said for why is it that when this happens, this is like the direction that you break. And that is never, it just seems to be given as like a default that like, well, if you ban somebody from a platform, of course they're going to become an insanely racist, anti-Semitic, hateful person that wants to see immigrants killed. It's like, really? First time I talked to Nick ever, I thought he was incredibly sharp and I was impressed by the conversation. And then I did a bunch of research and then I came back and then the second time I was significantly less impressed because I feel like I realized that there were a lot of talking points from the first conversation, but he couldn't like critically engage after some of those were pushed back on. And I do feel like one of the weakest points that he has is like...
In 2016, they were alt-right.
No, they were not.
Not even close. Not even close. Ben Shapiro, oh no. That's fine. He's not familiar.
Casting everyone who opposes what they're doing as just like a rabid Jew hater.
In some cases.
That's such a crazy... That's such a crazy way to phrase that issue, I guess. Like, did you watch this? Yep.
You said you want to
Nope, I was waiting for you.
ask me, why are you a Nazi?
Inclusion has been our greatest strength. Diversity has been our greatest strength.
White people do feel like we are being boxed out.
A 26-year-old white kid doesn't feel like he has access because he's been canceled, and the problem is black people.
I didn't say the problem's black people.
Well, you just did, Nick. You just
I
said
the problem is crime, and we know who's doing the crime in Chicago.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
About the Holocaust thing?
Oh, about that.
We get to say whatever we want on the internet. We get to deny the Holocaust.
As far as Jews are concerned in general, I think that everybody in the country should be treated with dignity and respect and have their civil rights.
Like, what do you think about somebody like Mamdani?
Personally, I don't like him. Like, for example, on 4th of July, when he takes the opportunity to sit there with, let's be honest, not a single white person.
What about fucking Donald Trump? There's no ideological core to Donald Trump.
No, I agree with you.
Don Jr. got the largest loan ever given by the Department of Defense.
Vance owes his entire political career to Peter Thiel.
Another issue, it's so funny actually, but maybe it's by design. Hassan had the exact same problem a long time ago with Charlie Kirk. I don't know if anybody watched that first time Hassan was on my stream where he came to me for debate tips or whatever. And one of the big issues that Hassan had with Charlie Kirk was that Hassan fundamentally was not able to deal with a non-neocon conservative. Like his approach to Charlie Kirk was like he was like a Bush era conservative. And even back then, the whole Tea Party movement had kind of twisted off from the big pro-corporatist, pro-big business, pro-foreign policy intervention Republican Party. And I think that when people look at like people like Fuentes, I don't know if people are capable of actually debating or dealing with an actual populist conservative, because they're going to have so much crossover on agreement. I don't know, but we'll find out here, I guess, yeah.
Whichever firm is the one to develop ASI, that could confer dictatorial-like powers upon the CEO of that company.
Everything that we think about the way in which we exist in the world completely changes.
Increasingly with Uber, Airbnb, banking apps, you can't live your life without the tech platforms.
Everything that AI is built on is ours. That's what they're stealing from us. I want to find common ground of how much of a shithead Donald Trump is. We can get there, okay?
Like, Dude, this has been like the most frustrating thing with Josiah too. I see him in chat. Is people don't seem to have a mind for macro ideas or for meta ideas, which oftentimes in the past were annoying as fuck to talk about. But now they're like, it's really important to understand that like this finding common ground is not always good. People think that if you have common ground, that you should focus on that. And in some ways, the common ground is more dangerous than the separated ground because the common ground leads you into believing that you have way more in common with the other person than you actually do, right? Nick Fuentes and his people are not happy with Donald Trump. But it's not because of the reasons why your people or our people or us are not happy with Donald Trump. It's because Donald Trump failed to deliver on all of the radical shit that Fuentes would have wanted. It's not because...
Didn't go far enough.
Yeah, it's not because he... he's not like pro-democracy or whatever the fuck else. It's because he was too pro-democracy, or he was too he didn't do like the anti-Jew shit as much as he wanted to, or the fix the crime or make people aware of like race issues or whatever. But I don't know. We'll see.
the kind of first question that I had whenever I caught wind that you wanted to do an interview like this is, why now? What made you want to sit down for this kind of interview?
Well, I think it's an interesting conversation to have all of us here. And, I think it's a moment in our country when there's a lot of realignment. I think that people recognize, especially in the past couple of years, I'm like,
would you be okay with finding common ground if the other people also wanted to work with you? No, I don't think you should be. Not if they are aimed at a thing that is completely and totally different. I don't think you should be. I would be worried that my opinion is being used to legitimize something that I don't agree with at all. Like if I feel like I'm being brought onto a podcast and then I get the feeling that like, wait a second, you have me here to just launder your opinions, then no, now I'm gonna be more adversarial than I would have otherwise, because I don't want to give the impression that I'm supporting something that I wouldn't want my audience to support.
a non-conventional critic, maybe.
We live in a pluralistic society, and you have to work with people you disagree with. You're anti-American. You're dead wrong. There are certain things that we have to be able to accept in society, that where we are going to have to accept that some people disagree with us. That's true. But there are some things that we should never disagree on. So like a really basic thing would be rule of law. All of us should agree that we all have to follow the laws. There's not a room for disagreement there. There is no real America that exists past the point of oh, well, I actually think that law should be optional. We don't have to follow the law, LOL. There are going to be some foundational things that Americans should agree on. And if you can't agree on that, you have nothing.
Of what's happening. And so I think it'll be an interesting, productive conversation. I think it'll be different.
But I mean, specifically, because we kind of share a publicist, I heard that you wanted to kind of... Okay, we have a publicist. I heard that you wanted to kind of...
Andrew's publicist? I am not Nick's publicist. Okay.
Okay, we have a publicist that you hit up, and you said that you wanted to talk to someone who would give you kind of a fair shot to clear up some things and maybe some misconceptions about you and the things you believe.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think that, I'm somebody who, I think like you, actually, maybe...
Have you realized that people copy Nick's accent? Like when you do a campus event, I can tell just by listening to their voice for 5 seconds that they're a griper. It's because Nick is a streamer, right? And he puts out a ton of content. It's the same thing with me. There are a lot of people where you listen to oh, that guy's a Destiny fan. It's just when you listen to a person speak a ton, you're going to pick up a lot of their mannerisms. You also notice that if you're at home or whatever and your mom is calling you, yeah, she sounds like me too. Ooh, yeah.
We have this in common is kind of pigeonholed in a certain way for things that we've done in the past or things that we've said.
I'm a crackhead.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm racist, right?
I got pigeonholed there. Mine is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mine's a little true. Maybe a little no. But yeah, so I think it'd be good to clear up some of the misrepresentations and put out something accurate.
So what do you think is the most misrepresented thing about you?
Well, I think really the whole image everybody has about me. When you mentioned me, I think on a recent show, you said you want to ask me, why are you a Nazi?
Yeah.
And that's how everybody knows me. Everybody thinks of me as a white supremacist Nazi, and I don't think that's really true at all. I think that we definitely have different values.
Just a white
You're more from the
supremacist.
left, I'm more from the right. But I don't think I'm a hater. I'm not a hateful person.
It is Heil Hitler Friday, Heil Hitler, all my niggas Nazis.
Hitler was very fucking cool.
Yes, I do.
One of the
And I'm tired of pretending he's not.
So what's the thing about, I guess, traditional Nazism that you think you disagree with the most?
Well, it's a non-Christian ideology. So, I mean, look, I believe that race is real, as the Nazis did, but I don't think it utterly defines a person.
Watching race realists do these shows is frustrating because it's like watching commies do shows where nobody really knows how to ask them the right questions to push back on them. A race realist, given the opportunity to present his vision of race, is always going to trump somebody who is going to be a fucking virtue signaler, right? I think race is real. I think it's a total social construct. It's not real at all. It's okay, well, why do some people look different than other people? They can't. And then people like Nick or other kinds of race realists are just going to be able to say whatever they want, basically with no actual pushback or what. Because the problem with race realists aren't that they think that there is some, broad differences or whatever between different groups of people. It's their prescriptions after that are we need to ban certain groups of people from ever coming to the country, or we need to treat certain groups of people different. But I feel like they never quite get to that part of the conversation.
As a Christian, I think we're all created beings. I do believe there's such a thing as a universal human community. And so I think it's a cruel ideology. I've said this on my show, by the way, but I mean, that would maybe be the fundamental.
Did you always feel that way?
Always, yeah, absolutely.
So even whenever you were younger and stuff?
I did, but you know, you got to recognize times have changed. 10 years ago, we had a totally different political world. The regulation and policing of speech, you know, what you would call wokeness, I think was at an all-time high when I got started as a very young man.
What you would call wokeness?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think, I mean, would you not
maybe
say there
him,
were
maybe
some
him,
excesses maybe in those days?
Yeah, in those days, I wasn't doing too well, so I wasn't paying much attention. Anyway, I would love to hear, and I'm not asking you to like retract everything that you've ever said and all, you know, or anything, but I said that I would love to talk to you because number one, I told you this, is that I think you're really smart, and I think that with that comes in a real responsibility. And you have an audience. And I have a friend whose son is my daughter's age, you know, maybe 28, you know, your age. And he's really smart. And he is a big fan of yours. And so by virtue of the relationship, I got to learn what it is that why he is a fan of yours. And none of it has to do with, I would hope you agree, like really egregious things that you've said in the past about the Holocaust or about, you know.
Do the Jews ever talk about the 100 million whites that died in World War II? Or do they just bitch and moan about the so-called 6 million Jews that died?
And so it's just nice to poke holes in it and say, it's not 6 million.
6 million? I don't think so.
And I don't even know, I think I've heard you since kind of rescind a lot of that.
You concede that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust.
Possibly more. Possibly, you know, we're discovering all the time. So it could be, maybe even be more than that.
But what he...
What? Okay. He's clearly trolling here, but okay. Okay.
The so-called 6 million Jews that died.
And so it's just nice to poke holes in it and say, it's not 6 million.
6 million? I don't think so.
And I don't even know, I think I've heard you since kind of rescind a lot of that.
You concede that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust.
Possibly more. Possibly, you know, we're discovering all the time. So it could be, maybe even be more than that.
But what he agrees with is kind of the anger about the situation that particularly your generation finds yourself in. I know that to be real. And I think that there, you know, maybe my reasons for recognizing that anger as being legitimate and my targets are different than yours. I just wanted to hear from you. When you say you were canceled by the right in 2016.
Yes.
I almost felt like in preparing to meet you now, is that your reaction to that was to just dig deeper and deeper into kind of the outsider, kind of radical, say anything for the purpose of generating, you know, the attention to build an audience. Is that true? And it's not an accusation. I really mean it. I want this to be a conversation as much as possible.
I mean, there's certainly some truth to that, but I think that might be overstating it a little bit, because I really got canceled by the right and the left.
Yeah.
And back in those days in 2017, you had these far-left journalists at Huffington Post, Right Wing Watch, ADL, SPLC, and I really believe they were on a mission to find extremist rhetoric, the white nationalist, neo-Nazi boogeyman, all that kind of stuff. And they would look at someone like myself, 18, and if I was being serious or joking, things taken out of context, they would clip it, post it, and they wanted me to be the villain. And I think they wanted a lot of people to be the villain. And I think the left, in a way, created this climate where I think they pushed a lot of people farther to the right.
No, by the way, that very well may be true, but you gave them a lot of ammunition.
That's true.
You know, I mean, I hope that some of those things that you said in the past are not things that you believed in and that are
How old is Fuentes now?
I'll look it up.
Because one way that he could back away from a lot of the more extreme shit that he said, he really legitimately could use.
He's 28.
Yeah, he could use age as an excuse. Because I think he was a pretty well-known, like the people mind shit out of his like college years of saying retarded shit. Like that quote about like wanting to, that like a white woman having sex with a black man is like bestiality or whatever. I think that was the thing he said when he was like a sophomore in college or something.
Meant just to engender like a really radical kind of response. I mean, is that true or not?
Well, you know, again, I think that back in those days, you could not say anything. In 2017, 2018, cancel culture was so in overdrive, any joke, any edgelording, anything like that, they would, first of all, there's no sense of
See,
humor.
I'm so old. I don't even. What's
Okay, well, to break it
edgelordy?
down for you, so the dawn of wokeness as it's known today, I think was in like the post-Trump era. After Trump won the election in 2016, there was a big movement to deplatform and kind of push away those who, I guess the left feel like had galvanized them into the presidency. So there was this big idea that if you push people off mainstream social media platforms, they would go away. Now we know through Trump's reelection, that's not even true. But at the time, that was the mantra. Problematic viewpoints needed to be silenced, tucked away somewhere, and they would just sort of die in isolation. So I think that was the climate where you first got started, 2017. That time period was like crucial for getting people off mainstream platforms. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I would say that you got to get into the psychology of those days. It felt like anybody that wasn't on board with the most progressive agenda had no options. There was just no alternative. It was going to be progressive, liberal, feminist, BLM, all that kind of stuff. And if you were to the right of John McCain, you're no platformed. Censored, banned from all the platforms, you're fired from your job, you're ostracized socially. And I think what happened really in 2021 when Trump got banned from the platforms is it felt like 70 million people got canceled. 70 million people that voted for Trump, or 60, 70 million people, we were all felt like, oh, so if Trump is out of politics and we're all banned from the platforms, then how is there any redress for our grievances? Do we just have to shut up and get with the program and we're all going to be progressive? And I think that drove people to a far more radical place where people said, well, what really is a solution? We can't talk. We can't express ourselves. We can't participate in the process or run for office. And I was one of the people saying that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to drive people to extremism. If you don't talk, if people don't feel like they have a seat at the table and enfranchisement, I think then they start exploring options outside the system, outside of the political process, the democratic process. So I think it's self-inflicted in many ways.
So you feel like after the mass deplatforming in 2021, whenever people on the right got pushed to platforms like Parler, Gab, Rumble, etc., the lack of discourse and like the political singularity of those platforms created more extremism?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because look, you take Trump off of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I predicted this in 21. I said, watch, you're going to see alternative social media rise because some venture capitalist is going to see there's a huge market of 70 million people that are going to follow Trump because Trump is no platformed. And that's exactly what happened. Rumble blew up, Elon bought Twitter, and what happened when you had total free speech on these platforms? Well, Twitter now resembles 4chan. And now, there's no gatekeepers. And I think it did push people in a radical direction. And honestly,
something needs to be said for this. Is like the podcast format would be a really great way to have a good conversation about this instead of all these like one-liners. Something needs to be said for why is it that when this happens, this is like the direction that you break. And that is never, it just seems to be given as like a default that like, well, if you ban somebody from a platform, of course they're going to become an insanely racist, anti-Semitic, hateful person that wants to see immigrants killed. It's like, really? Does that have, that's just like a given? Because like the funny comparison I always like to make is look at Blue Sky and look at, I guess Blue Sky, right? When the libs all make their platform, it turns into this like super boring, nothing exciting is happening, and it's like a big circle jerk or whatever. And I like, that's what it is. But then when the right make their platforms, Gab and Parler, it's like, holy fuck, it's like 80% neo-Nazis. Why? Why is that? What's going on there, right?
people are even blowing past me. Now there's like mainstream normie types that are even
like he's doing the, I guess if to reframe it and however our conversations have been going, he's doing the Destiny is filtering his turrets to only target the biters and isn't doing something silly like just putting these turrets as close as possible to the nest perimeter without being range of the spawners, right? What? Fuck off. Fuck, what was I saying? Oh, this is the adult child or like the environment versus agency thing. He's just giving the explanation that like conservatives were all turned into conservatives were all basically turned into Nazis because they got censored, I guess. Like, that's it.
Blowing past me in terms of how radical they are. People start saying things like, there's no political solution, there's going to be a civil war, we need a revolution. And I think that's because the message from the left was, you're crushed. You have no options, you can't win, there's no alternative. Trump is going to be indicted and charged and can't run. You can't be on Twitter, you can't have a job. And so people started to say, okay, well, you know, we still exist. We're still here, we still have these concerns. What do we do now? And then people start to say, well, we need a revolution. And I'm one of the only people saying, no, we should still engage in the process and talk with each other. And it's not all one-sided. I think there's problems on the left and the right, but I certainly think it takes two to tango.
Okay, so there, we agree. I think that there are problems on the left and the right, and I don't disagree with some of the things that you just said. I guess I just came to a different conclusion, that there are some things that people should be deplatformed for. Not that they can't say it where they want to say it, but I think that it's a right of anybody.
Okay, top 3 things. What do you think?
There's a difference between being able to say that you're proud of your white heritage and also being just a flat-out racist. I think that there's a difference between saying you're proud of your Christian heritage and the white culture from what you come from and Nazis, or that you adopt the Nazism as a legitimate ideology. I think that there's a difference between saying that you disagree with the United States policy as it relates to Israel and saying that the Holocaust didn't exist.
I was like, Mom, Dad, Hitler was awesome. Hitler was right. And the Holocaust didn't happen. And my parents were like, we cannot believe.
Those would be top 3 things in my mind. I know that you believe that some people took you out of context, and I do agree. Look, I'm both the right and the left.
Okay.
There
On which
are
things?
These gatekeepers, 100%. And look at me. The mainstream press just destroyed me for 7 years without any real kind of reflection about what they were doing. I do think that, some of those things are legitimate reasons to say, we don't want you on our, on our commercial platform. Would you agree with that? I mean, you just said, for instance, people calling for like an armed revolution, like people calling for actual violence. You're opposed to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm against violence,
Yeah.
and I do think those are one of the legitimate things that should be taken from the platform. There's a lot of this stuff on social media.
I hate that so much of our language is warped that we need to be able to speak about this stuff better now. Like, I don't like this phrase of like, hold on. I need to go into Fox News Jesse Waters about to see what can get clipped here. We need to have an elevated discourse about violence because there are ways of enacting violence against people that people don't consider to be violence. And for too long, certain groups of people have gotten away with pretending that they're not enacting violence while criticizing the other side for enacting violence. So I don't like it when conservatives keep saying like, oh, I'm anti-violence, I'm anti-political violence, I'm anti-political violence. Like, well, what do you mean when you say political violence? Well, I don't think we should go out in the streets and killing people. Oh, okay. Do you support ICE going out in the streets and killing people? Well, that's their job, and if people get in the way, then they should. Okay, so you don't support political violence because you've gotten to relabel all of your desires of political violence as state-sanctioned violence. That doesn't really feel fair. It doesn't feel balanced there, And then it's not surprising that the other side feels like they want to rise up and be violent when you're basically using the state as an arm of your political ideology to enforce violence for you. Like, that doesn't seem to be like an okay thing,
Yeah, I don't agree with, but again, what started to happen is there was this like editorial censorship where certain ideas were banned. And it was such a broad brush and also totally opaque and ad hoc. You'd be on YouTube, like I was, for example, they banned me for life and didn't even give me a reason. Not a specific quote, not a specific infraction. And so you don't know what the rules are. You don't know what the process is. They just take you down. And especially now when everything is digital, that's not just the social platforms, it's the other ones like Uber, Airbnb, whatever. It feels like you're being denied almost something like a civil right because the social platforms are the modern public square. Increasingly with Uber, Airbnb, the banking apps, you can't live your life without.
Like, I kind of agree, obviously, as somebody who's been banned and is currently banned from a huge streaming platform. Like, I do agree that this is really fucking annoying, and I feel like there should be more, more feedback, more oversight, more something on these. But, like, would I morph my entire political ideology as a result of that? I don't know. It seems kind of weird.
The tech platforms. And it felt like if you just simply had the wrong opinions or you were the wrong kind of person, you were being deprived of like a basic civil right or being able to participate in society. So, and I think maybe that's an area of collaboration where we recognize maybe it is a civil right to use the digital platforms, but here are the rules. Here's what you can say. Here's what you can't say. Here's the process. Maybe there's a reconciliation mechanism. But I mean, the censorship was just out of control. I don't think anyone disagrees there's a reasonable limit, though.
Yeah, no, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't see that as a result of left-wing or right-wing ideology. I
Yeah, this is a
view
moderation problem on
kind of
social media
level
platforms.
Of deplatforming. Look, I was debanked. I was debanked before I was ever even charged with anything. I lost every bank account. It took me, 9 months once they, the Trump administration, said that they were starting an investigation into me to be able to actually get a bank account again. And I don't want to tell you the bank because tomorrow they may debank me again. But my point is that those people are incredibly identifiable. I've been talking and going around and I say things like, I don't think we are nearly as divided as they're telling us we are. Because I do believe that there are an identifiable group of people that are responsible for an enormous amount of the discord and division because they make money off of it. I think that these social media companies that are controlled by 3, 4, 5, individuals have made it clear that they only care about one thing. They only care about how much money they can produce for themselves and, the people that hold stocks in their company. Even to the degree where we know for certain that they're driving teenage girls to the highest levels of suicide by a factor, like exponential factors, directly related to the content that they're being pushed, and they won't do anything about it.
Right.
And so, to the same degree, I think they, a lot of what you call wokeness was maybe an illegitimate, but a financial decision based on a lot of these.
Corporate psyop, maybe.
Corporate psyop.
Thank you.
I mean, by the way, exactly. I
just wanted to back up real quick.
I was like, nobody wants to hear this, but like at some point we have to have like a real conversation as like, what do we want our society to look like? And we have to stop pretending that it's just like big evil corporations that are making society bad and social media bad and everything. Like people want these things. They interact with it. They engage with it to some extent. Like, people are happy to have all their information on Google and Facebook and happy to have all the ads and everything else, like, because people continue to engage with it. And people make those choices over and over again to engage with it, even when alternatives exist. Like DuckDuckGo exists and all these other platforms exist, but people still use the big one because of the convenience features of it. We need to be able to have an honest conversation with why with our engagement of these things, okay?
So you talked about certain people going too far. About 2.5 months ago, I visited a whites-only community in Hardy, Arkansas. And I don't know why, I guess coming from like a more like left-wing place, I'm from Seattle, I kind of assumed there was like a united front on the right for some reason. So I'm out there, I'm chilling with these dudes, they're like sword fighting, having barbecues. Overall it was a good time for them. I had a hard time connecting with them because I don't agree with them, but it's all good. I was having fun for a couple days. And then like right as I was there, I guess you had hit them up on X or something and said like, hey, I don't want to associate with you guys. What happened there?
Well, that was really more of a personal disagreement with the guy that founded it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an interesting project, and it's interesting that got so much pushback, this whites-only community, because you know what? If you go to a lot of these different neighborhoods in major cities, there are ethnic enclaves, and it's not like there's an explicit rule that you have to be a certain ethnicity, but we all know in Chicago and New York and LA, you got certain neighborhoods where it is 80, 90% one ethnicity.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of white people that say we kind of want something similar. I don't think there's anything.
But Nick,
Okay, let's back up. If you want to talk about the histories of New York and Chicago, I feel like that was also a conscious decision that was.
You need to engage with that. Especially if you're going to bring on somebody like Nick, like you have to assume, you need to give these people credit for their political projects, okay? Fuentes is not an idiot. And you're going to have to assume that whatever idea he's trying to sell you here, it's not going to be something that you can deal with so simply as to just laugh it off and say, oh, well, that's obviously stupid. Well, why is it that you can have really? Why is it that we can have like Little Italy and we can have little, like Chinatown or all these other kind of like ethnic whatever, enclaves, whatever you want to call it. Why is it that we can have all those things, but we couldn't have like a whites-only town? Like, you have to be able to address that. Like, what is the difference?
It's made like after the Civil Rights Act.
Blacks only. It's in Cabrini Green, where Mayor Daley made everybody that was black live in the Cabrini Green. I mean, it's not, that wasn't by choice. It's not by choice that these ethnic enclaves are 80 or 90%, whatever that ethnicity is. It's because that's the only place in which they had an opportunity to live unbothered, or where they were told that they had to live because of the historical fact that they could not move into other neighborhoods. You could not move into parts of South Chicago without, being stoned.
Right.
Literally, right?
Yeah.
And so, like so it's not as if those ethnic enclaves are there by choice. You know,
Like this is just I'm sorry, but I don't buy this anymore. I don't think that's true. I do think that people enjoy living, especially if you come to the United States as a certain ethnicity, that there are certain neighborhoods that you can move into and feel a little bit more at home, or feel a little bit more, I guess I'll say like safe, just like you just feel more comfortable there. I don't buy this that it's all just a vestige of the past, but I think the difference is that people are more likely to want to move to those types of areas if they're an ethnic minority, because they feel like they're kind of like washed out of the main culture, or their culture or ethnic identity or whatever is kind of going to be erased if they are just moving in with the main culture, and then they might feel a little bit scared or whatever of that. But I'm willing to bet that their kids are probably less likely to live there than they are. But there's a difference between like the white, like a white majority race person in like a white majority race country that just doesn't usually have the same concerns. This is why white identitarian types or white nationalists or whatever will try to sell you on the idea that the white race is under attack, because they know they need to create that same idea that actually, you know, you are under threat from other ethnic minorities in order to sell you on the idea for why you should have your white only neighborhoods. Wait, are you here right now?
Yeah.
Is DGG down?
Yeah. Are you saying like people who move from like Portugal would rather live in like little Portugal than?
Not all the time, but there are
Otherwise?
definitely people that do that move from other countries and want to move to like the Chinese part or the, I don't know how big Portuguese parts of cities are or whatever, but like, yeah, they're absolutely.
I would say most people, that's like a normal thing, I feel like, though.
Well, maybe. I don't know how normal it is, but yeah, it definitely happens. But like, there's a difference between that versus like you're the ethnic majority in a place and you're like, I want to be in a place where there's only my ethnic majority and nobody else is allowed there. Like, it's a different type of feeling. I'm not even necessarily saying you shouldn't be allowed to, but I mean, it is different.
Also, ethnic enclaves do exist for like specific variations of different Europeans. Like, you know, there is like places that are chocolate. Like South Philly's full of Italians.
There's Little Italy and there's Little Korea.
So I think the issue,
Japan.
I always like, what confused me the most about the whites only community is like, there's just so many different kinds of white people in America. You know, so like to establish a unified white culture with a place so diverse and full of like different regional flavors just kind of felt confusing to me.
That's
because
true.
it can
That's a
mean
good
a
point.
different thing depending on what part of the country or what European enclave you originated from. Like, we're Irish people from the Philly area. Can you compare that to like, you know, surfers in San Diego or even like, you know, Italian Americans in Staten Island? I don't know, everything just feels so different. So when I got there, I was trying to identify what they meant by white culture. It wasn't really based on shared like cultural practices, but more the
rejection of other things, yeah.
exclusion of people who weren't white. So they weren't like stoked on being European necessarily. They were more just like, oh, we're here because those people aren't here. So it just kind of felt more negative than constructive.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not really involved with that project in particular, but I think that, look, I mean, you talk about the anger that's out there and the frustration, and I think part of the frustration, let's be honest, is that white people do feel like we are being boxed out in major cities in the country, and it feels like, look, there's a little Haiti, and there's various ethnic enclaves where you get that local culture, and they do their, you know, cultural festivals and that sort of thing. And white people feel like they're being pushed out, and they want a space where things are familiar.
Do you feel the same way about
But white
the
people can
Italian
do this.
festival?
They just don't.
Don't what?
Like, they have 4th of July and shit, right? I would say that's like a pretty like American slash. I guess I would say that's American. White.
Sure.
But I guess like America, I don't know. It gets into weird stuff of where I feel like it's white people complaining that they can't act and have their own fucking holidays or whatever. But it's like, well, what is a fucking white holiday?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, I think Andrew, I think, just brought it up. Like, it is hard because it feels like they never really have a good definition of any
What
of the
they
stuff
want?
they're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. This is part of that in that debate with Constantine. I brought this up, and people thought I was saying that there is absolutely no such thing as like British culture or British values. When I was asking him, like, what are some of these things? Because if you can't even tell me what you're trying to protect, I don't know how I'm even supposed to deal with your arguments. And that is a huge issue that a lot of these people have, is they can't actually define any of these things.
No.
That happens in every city.
Well, here's a good example. So,
or St. Patrick's Day?
well, you know, there's no Irish neighborhood in Chicago. Little
Sure
Italy.
there is.
I mean, there's some
Also,
remnant in Bridgeport.
yeah.
And
It's important to note that, like, and I'm not trying to get into like a shouting match here, but like, you know, as a family who did coming from a family who did leave Philadelphia in the 60s because of black migration from the South after the Civil Rights Act was passed, there was a sort of like mass flight of white people into the suburbs, and that kind of led to a homogenization of different cultures because they rushed so fast to build these like identical strip mall suburbs that it was very hard to maintain cultural bonds that made different European and white neighborhoods unique around like the 1950s and before. So I feel like the mass suburbanization is also a big factor that led to those like cultural bonds breaking.
Yeah, but why did that happen? I mean, a lot of the suburbanization is because of the race riots in the 1960s. People moved out because of the violence. You know, my grandfather was in the National Guard in Chicago when, after MLK got assassinated, the whole West Side burned to the ground. And people didn't want to be around that anymore.
Why were the riots?
MLK Jr. was assassinated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so does that justify burning down the city?
No, I didn't say it
never recovered?
justifies it, but it sure justifies an enormous amount of the anger, the same kind of anger that you feel about being left out, the same kind of anger that you're expressing right now about the idea that you're culturally irrelevant, that you don't have a place in society. Imagine if you were a 26-year-old black man in 1968 and saw your hero be assassinated. And
I saw Trump get shot in the ear, and
did he?
And I saw Charlie Kirk get shot, and I didn't see any cities get burned down. It's funny how that works.
I think it's a very, very, very different thing. I think
How
it's
is that different? Charlie Kirk
thing.
got shot in the neck.
Something that's worth thinking about here is the idea that people love to throw that quote around when MLK said that riots are the language of the unheard, right? That conservatives will say this thing oftentimes where they'll say like, well, why is it that when this happened, you didn't see white people rise up and do all this stuff? Because white people generally in the United States, regardless of the complaints you see online, do feel heard, right? When you talk about like, well, when Trump almost got assassinated, why didn't all the conservatives rise up and do anything? Trump became the president of the United States, and there's a whole conservative party that has a whole set of conservative beliefs that are represented in American mainstream politics. Why would you riot if you feel like your voice is being heard because you have your whole political establishment that still represents your political beliefs? It doesn't make any sense to riot in that case, right? Like why? Like it's not like they weren't represented anymore. And I feel like, I think generally speaking, when you think of these riots, you're thinking of people who feel like their voices aren't being heard or aren't being represented as much. And I don't think conservatives have quite been at that level yet. Well, they were at that level once. It was called January 6th.
January 6th.
Yeah, and they did riot for that, but...
Yeah.
And liberals celebrated all over social media by Tyler Robinson.
Yeah. Who is what?
Who is some liberal guy.
He is? Mm-hmm. But
he's got a transgender boyfriend.
Does that make him liberal? Because he's transgender? Because he's gay?
Well, because he's got a transgender boyfriend, yeah, I think so.
It makes him liberal.
Really?
I think he was liberal, yeah.
Okay. Well, he didn't come from a liberal family.
True.
He didn't come from a liberal enclave.
True.
He didn't come from a liberal background.
True.
He's not a minority.
True.
He was a Mormon, correct?
True.
And grew up in a Mormon household.
True.
And he went to a largely Mormon college.
True.
And he ended up committing an act of violence, according to the FBI and the authorities in Utah that charged him. How does that in any way compare to what we're talking about? I'm not justifying the violence that occurred after the death of Martin Luther King, but you're saying that person, this Tyler, whoever his name is was as disenfranchised as the African-American community in 1968 in inner cities?
Well, the question is who we want to live around.
I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry.
And in the 1960s, the West Side burns down. We don't want to live around that. We don't want to live around a city that's burning down.
That's not when the white flight happened.
It is.
What?
What part of America was Fuentes from again?
Suburbs of Chicago. He'll say Chicago, but it's suburbs of Chicago. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just a little surprised that he has like these views, I guess, on like black people, etc. When I guess my gut feeling is like when people are more worldly, I guess, like when you get to interact with like different types of people, different looks and different colors and different, places, whatever, you're way less likely to be racist. So hearing he comes from like the
but I really
Chicago,
don't. Just in my perspective, when I interacted with him and everything, I don't know if he is like super racist and everything. I bet he was at one point, but I think to some extent, like him just being around so many people and everything, like I don't know how much he does like harbor actual hateful views like that. But you got to keep in mind that he might have when he was younger, especially because younger people think dumb things. But hasn't he basically had the same political ideology since he was like 19 or 20 years old?
Yeah.
So like he can't really change. This is one of the nice things about being like a nonpartisan or not having like a political movement. Like I'll say omniliberal or whatever, but it's not like I have an actual political movement. Is that I have a lot of flexibility to change my beliefs as I update information, and I just feel differently about different things. But if you're Nick Fuentes and you're the leader of the gripers in America First, you're kind of locked the fuck in. So even if his personal views on like race and other people or whatever did change over time, it wouldn't matter. He can never escape them.
Big response to it, absolutely.
No, 100% not. You
Absolutely.
make these historical connections that don't exist. Part of it was potentially, but before that, what Mayor Daley did is made Chicago the most segregated city in the entire United States, other than Boston. When you would come from the South to Chicago, African Americans from the South, blacks in the South coming to Chicago would say that Chicago was twice the level of segregation and racism that occurred in the South. And so it wasn't as if you're coming into a situation in which you're feeling in any way enfranchised by the community and the situation that you're in. And as many people left simply because of the idea that someone was black moving into their neighborhood as the violence that occurred after the assassination of Martin Luther King. So the numbers actually, pre-1968 when King was shot, you had more people leave the city because of the desegregation, because of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, than you did after the riots.
I think that's just not true. I think that the race riots were a huge driver of white flight to the suburbs. I think it's just dishonest to say that's not the case.
Okay, so what's your point about all of this?
Well, we're talking about where people want to live.
Yeah, I know. So like what in 2026?
Well,
what's the
okay,
point?
how about in 2020 when Minneapolis burned to the ground? Or how about in the summer of 2020 in Chicago?
Minneapolis didn't burn to the ground.
It didn't?
No. I mean, there were
Yeah, Jesse, that's why I said he's from the suburbs. A lot of people will say like they're from Chicago or whatever, but they actually live like a suburb like an hour away. That's just a pretty common thing for certain cities. People like to say they're from an area, but they actually are from the burbs. And then people from the actual cities will say, oh, where'd you live or whatever? And I'm like, well, you know, whatever. I was actually in the blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so you were 2 hours away, yeah.
Parts of it,
Okay,
dozens of structures.
if you guys need a physical witness to what happened in Minneapolis, there were many structures that burned to the ground. Not the city, but there was, I would say, between 40 to 50 buildings off of Lake Street in the south side that did burn to the ground. But most of the city was intact, but it was quite an intense situation.
People don't want to live around that. People don't want to live around that. You know, in Chicago, it rolled on into the summer, and it wasn't, you know, let's say, the anger of the oppressed and the disenfranchised.
So
They
who's
were
at fault?
looting. They were looting and
Who's
carjacking.
they?
The criminals.
Are you saying that the problem with the 26-year-old white kid living in suburbia outside of Chicago and his feeling of being disenfranchised is because there was looting and rioting in Minneapolis by black people? And it's black people that are doing it.
I don't think he'll make the connection, but Hunter is so close to something here because Hunter's right to ask this question, but I don't know if he realizes that, like, the answer to his question is obviously no, but the goal of political actors like Fuentes is to try to connect those things. Like, how do I make you, the white kid in some suburb, care what black people in some city far away are doing? I have to convince you that all of these things are connected somehow.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Austin Metcalf was that he got stabbed in the neck at a track meet. And the problem with our city in Chicago is that the Magnificent Mile is gone. Water Tower Place is gone because of all the crime.
Nick, and the time from an entire generation of African Americans is that they've been getting killed by cops for decades.
That's
what are
just
you
not
talking
true.
about, Nick?
Because they commit crime. And listen, it's not...
Nick,
What?
That's not true. It's not true. Are
it
you
is.
saying that police brutality as it relates and racism in the police force, in the way in which police treat African Americans? Nick, you could grow up here like I did between Wilmington and Philadelphia. And if you were a black dentist and you lived in Wilmington and you commuted...
Wait, is he from Chicago?
Which one? Hunter Biden?
Yeah.
I don't think so, but let me look.
Or does he just know stuff about Chicago, or?
They're from Delaware.
Oh, okay.
Between
I just want to say,
Wilmington and
Hunter Biden
Philadelphia.
is incredibly... he's a lot smarter than I figured he would be based on, I guess, all of the propaganda I was given by Fox News over the years. I haven't really sat and listened to him speak, but yeah.
He is smart. I mean, like, he went, like, all these guys were smart from these political families, because these were our best, the best of the best. These were our elites.
They go to real schools.
Kind of, yeah. He also, like, people, have you ever looked up, like, his employment history, basically?
No, I haven't.
People like to bring up
the Burisma meme.
Yeah, well, people like to bring up that, like, Hunter Biden, you know, should have never been on that board, and even libs will kind of concede on this. Like, yeah, true, maybe he shouldn't have been. That was like a little bit of nepotism. That's not true at all. He actually has like a decently impressive background. Fuck, I need to remember this. He was the head of I'll find it. Like he was on a lot of these boards for like financial companies and everything else. It was like, what am I thinking of? Was it a UN like healthcare food distribution thing or something? What am I? It's not that. But he sat on the board of blah, 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 blah. Somebody in chat will say it, so I don't have to search through all this.
Well, the top mine chat is down right now.
Well, what? Kick is still working. In 1996, Hunter accepted a consultant position at the bank holding company MBNA, and then he delayed his start at MBNA to serve as co-chair for his father's re-election campaign. By 98, he was the executive VP. Then he left the MBNA at 1998. Then he served as the U.S. Department of Commerce, in the U.S. Department of Commerce for Bill Clinton. He became a lobbyist, and he co-founded the firm Oldacre, Biden, and Belair in 2001.
So he wasn't just sitting around
No.
smoking crack.
Oh, he was appointed to a 5-year term on the board of directors of Amtrak by President George W. Bush in 2006. He was the board's vice chairman from 2006 till he was replaced as vice chairman in 2009. Wait, wasn't there a big, what am I thinking of, like food-related thing or UN or food-related thing?
I mean, the Amtrak sounds pretty huge.
Yeah,
no?
Amtrak was a thing, but there was another thing. Fuck, what am I thinking of?
World of food.
Nobody? I do need my DGG chat.
Aquila said McDonald's. I don't know.
World Kitchen? Was that it? Oh, how did I miss this? I'm sorry.
World Food Program.
From 2011 to 2017, Biden was on the board of directors of World Food Program USA, a 501c3 charity based in Washington, D.C. supports the work of the UN Work Food Program. He served as the board chairman from 2011 to 2015. I think it's like one of the largest like food things I think in the world, at least in the U.S. But like, yeah, he had like an impressive background prior to being that board in Burisma. But people only know that he smoked crack and that he was on that board in Burisma.
Fucked hookers, yeah.
Yeah, so then
That's
people
it.
basically think that, like at that point, like, well, why the fuck would he be on any board of anything? He's just like the president's son. This must be like an evil nepotism thing, you know?
And if you were a black dentist and you lived in Wilmington and you commuted to Philadelphia, the chances of you being pulled over by a state trooper, either Delaware or in Pennsylvania, are about 50 times that would be if it was a white guy. 50 times. And
We're
so what
talking
you're
about-
trying to tell me is that the problem in America right now is that a 26-year-old white kid who lives in suburban Chicago doesn't feel like he has access because he's been canceled or he's been woke, and the problem is black people.
I didn't say the problem's black people.
Well, you just did, Nick. You just
I
said
said the problem is crime, and we know who's doing the crime in Chicago. The carjackings, shootings, teen takeovers. We know why there's no business on the Mag Mile anymore, and it's because they steal cars, they drive them through windows. And listen, black people are some of the biggest victims of the black crime. But we're not allowed to talk about it because of the racial
What do you mean
dimension.
you're not allowed to talk about it? We're talking about it right here.
Hey,
You
guys,
have a platform in which
I think
millions
we're-
of people listen to
I
you,
think-
Nick.
I think-
Millions.
Well,
What?
after Elon had to buy Twitter and open it up.
Careful. Interesting conversations happening. We need to moderate it. We need to get the moderator here to stop the interesting conversation. Just kidding.
It wasn't like that before. I was banned from everything for many years. So no, you weren't allowed it. You're right. We could talk about it now, but that's only because the good guys
Nick.
won.
Hey, what's up, guys? There's something I forgot to tell you about. We also just launched our own streaming platform called C5.now. We have 5 films on there right now. Film number 1, The Art of Protest, made by the homies over at Indecline, who we interviewed a few months back. Film 2, Rat Film by Theo Anthony, set in Baltimore, investigates the lives and times of the rodent population through the eyes of the people who love the rats of Baltimore, study the rats of Baltimore, or are paid to execute and trap the rodents of Charm City. Documentary number 3, Star Cash by Haley Garrigus, an amazing Wall Street documentary that follows the lives of market predictors, that's right, stock analysts who stare at the planets to figure out what's going to happen with the money. Documentary number 4, it's called Physician Heal Thyself by director Asher Penn, a fascinating lifelong profile.
Can we just ask Claude how to fix chat?
I mean, J. Dr. Banana, he just forgot to say, make no mistakes on whatever he
Yeah.
did.
Why didn't you add
He
to the
fucked it
thing?
up.
Make sure chat doesn't crash.
Make no mistakes.
featuring tons of archival footage documenting a physician, psychiatrist, philosopher, sorcerer of the mind named Gabor Mate. Very influential dude as far as addiction and trauma and healing. He's about as good as it gets. He's the top dog in that realm. So check that documentary out. Documentary number 5 is my own. Had to put my own sauce on there to get the train moving. It is called Finding Orson. A 45-minute documentary that I shot over the course of a year and a half, trying to reunite a beloved friend,
music.
an elderly community member named Rick Shore, with his lost parrot, named Orson. Maybe he's just too embarrassed to admit that he doesn't want the bird anymore. So those are the 5 films on C5.now. A totally independent, creator residual forward, power to the people documentary platform, not gatekept by Hollywood. And what's unique
And
about
big
C5.now is
hell
that
yeah.
unlike the major studios, we're not afraid to take a risk. And of course, pay creators fairly. The link is in the pinned comment and description box of this video. And most importantly, it's not just a website. It's an app on your phone and a smart TV app. So get your popcorn, get your remote, sit down. It's time to learn. I'll see you guys soon.
I can finally release my J6 video on that platform. True.
You went from being banned on Twitter to being on YouTube to creating
I'm
an
not on
entire show.
YouTube.
I know you're not, but now you have Kick and now you have all of these other things. You have an enormous platform. I want to find common ground of how much of a shithead Donald Trump is. We can get to, we can get there. Okay?
He does. How do you think he watches my stream, bro?
What I don't understand is how you didn't recognize that in 2016, and how you didn't recognize that in 2020, and how you didn't recognize that in 2024. Because Donald.
One of the most frustrating things to me for that conversation last night is, fuck, Josiah's not still here, is he? Oh, DGG has down, so we can't even hear him, even if he says anything. Is the idea that, like, we're gonna give Kyle Kalinske a chance, okay? We got to give him a chance.
Oh, this shit, yeah.
And it's like, we had the chance. It was the last election. I don't understand how somebody can slide by on that. I also don't like sometimes that people aren't capable, it seems, of like considering like the alternative motivations where it's like, well, now he's saying that things are worse than he could have imagined. Now it's like, well, yeah, because now there's a whole bunch of political capital to gain from talking about how bad things are. But like, I have a huge problem with people. I've argued a lot with personal friends, ex-conservatives and stuff like that, where it's like, it's fine to call a thing, me and Lauren used to fight about this. It's fine to call a thing out, like once you're outside of it, but it's like, man, that would have been really nice to call it out while you were actually in it, you know? That would have been really cool to have a voice that was like a big part of that movement to call it out, rather than just after the fact being like, oh yeah, this thing is really bad, by the way.
It's like all the senators leaving and then being like,
Exactly,
actually,
yeah.
Trump's really bad.
Yeah, the ones to fight against Trump are the ones whose political careers are basically over. And it's like, well, fuck, it's not helping us that much now, you know?
Yeah. Kyle Kalinske only voted for Jill Stein 3 times. Yahoo!
Trump
I did in
hasn't,
24.
because Donald Trump hasn't changed. Donald Trump hasn't changed at all. Donald Trump has been Donald Trump since he came out of the womb of a woman that was an immigrant to this country. And so what I want to know, though, is that I don't know how we get past this idea that the biggest problem that you have with your personal situation and how you extrapolate that to the situation of other white kids that are your age, that feel disenfranchised, that feel left out, that feel they don't have a shot at the American dream, is because of black and brown people, because of Mexicans, because of Venezuelans, because of Haitians, it's always other, Nick, with you. It seems to me, and I've listened to a lot of the stuff. It's always them. We need to build a wall. Where's the wall, Nick? He never built the wall. Why'd you vote for him in
Nick
2020?
knows.
Why'd you vote for
That's
him
why
in
he's upset with him.
2024?
I didn't vote for him in 24.
Okay. My point being is that
like, I hate the
whenever
motherfucker.
you identify your problem as being something that is other, that you can point to, that's a minority, that is a group of people, that's the Jews, I mean, before, remember, all of us, you know, it was the Irish Catholics who were all committing the crime, who weren't allowed into bars, who weren't allowed into, because you know why? Because they were dirty, poor, non-Europeans. They were Irish. Every time it's wrong. Every time history has proven that to be wrong in the United States of America.
I always thought that was, the first time I talked to Nick ever, I thought it was incredibly sharp. And I was impressed by the conversation. And then I did a bunch of research, and then I came back, and then the second time I was significantly less impressed, because I feel like I realized that there were a lot of talking points from the first conversation, but he couldn't like critically engage after some of those were pushed back on. And I do feel like one of the weakest points that he has is like all of the negative things that you can say about immigrants today in the United States, like those things were said literally verbatim about Irish, Italian people way back in the past. Like they literally form cultural enclaves. They literally all lived together. They literally had like a separate culture and everything. Like all of the, whatever you can say about Mexicans or whatever else, like all of these things absolutely mapped onto these immigrants in the past. I never felt like he had a great answer to that, but
Every time. Inclusion has been our greatest strength. Diversity has been our greatest strength. And I hear you talk about this idea of white culture. What fucking white culture are you talking about, man?
It's also a good-
What
Shakespeare, Dante, Mozart. We're in Philadelphia.
Shakespeare, Dante, Mozart. Like, how many people even watch Shakespearean plays outside of like schools? Or how many people... Is Dante the author, or is Dante just the name of the character in Dante's Inferno?
He had to go back to the 1500s.
And then also, also how many people listen to fucking Mozart? It was Dante Alighieri or whatever. Yeah. Like the idea that this is your white culture. So what, whites stopped making culture in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s? Like,
Yeah, the founding fathers.
Yeah.
That's your white
How about
culture.
the Count of Monte Cristo? Would you consider that part of our white culture?
Sure.
Okay. Well, it was written by a black man in France in the 1700s.
In a milieu of European civilization.
So what?
Because
so
you're
what? It's
picking
not
out,
white or
you're picking
black,
out one
Nick.
example. It
I'm
really
not
is.
just-
you really should just ask, who's your favorite artist? Because it's Kanye West, and I think he would even say that.
You have one
It
example.
really is.
Nick.
Listen.
Nick, I'm not. I really am not.
Hey guys, I think we're reaching what's called a rock in a hard place. Let's talk about it.
Oh my God.
Well, let me respond to this because you're telling me I'm always blaming the other.
No, Nick, for real.
For real.
Here's the thing, is that the way that you talk and throw out these historical facts, which by the way aren't fucking facts. Okay?
Which ones aren't facts?
Well, as it relates to the Civil Rights Movement in 1968, and the reason why we're out in the problem that we're in is because the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964. Dr. Martin Luther King was killed and
65?
shot by a white racist, white supremacist in 1968 on a
68.
balcony of a motel. That's
Was it 4 years after? Damn.
the root of our trouble, because an entire people that have been disenfranchised and enslaved for over 400 years.
We're sick of hearing about that, though. It's 2026.
You may be sick of hearing about it, but you know what? They aren't. And I'll tell you what, Nick.
Get
here's the other
over
thing.
it. Get over it. It's America.
Okay, but Nick, you can say stuff like that, okay, without having to say it like that. And
That's not how it started, though.
This is a legitimate
He's
argument.
mad about
but
something that happened in 1968 or whatever.
Meanwhile,
but
his
he's bringing
white
up
culture
shit that
is
happened
stuff-
in 1500s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's kind of silly, yeah.
Guys, Nick, Hunter,
Yeah.
what do you guys make of the concept of community collapse? Have you guys heard of this?
What? Why did he cut that out? Okay.
No.
So it's got nothing to do with race, got nothing to do with money, but
wants
this is
to get
kind
to
of a
the
crazy
Jews.
stat. So in 2019, before COVID, 76% of Americans said they were a part of an in-person community that gave them some kind of value. After COVID, and this year, it was 19%. So I think that politics and race aside, one of the biggest issues is the collapse of social bonds, third spaces, communities, in-person engagement, which comes with loneliness, more time online, and more division. I understand I feel like you guys aren't going to agree. I want to talk about what you guys think can be done on an individual and community level to stop people from hating each other and to create more belonging and engagement.
Well, number one, I think this. Okay, for real.
Podcasting.
No, not podcasting, this discussion. For me to be able to sit down with someone who I so vehemently disagree with and find some kind of common ground.
But I
don't
mean,
want, look,
guy at home who's
Yeah.
watching this on his phone just thinking, I wish I could go outside, but I don't know anyone.
Okay, well, here's what I'm talking about. It's all about connection. It is all about actually connecting with people. And I'm not talking about digitally connecting with people anonymously online. I'm talking about actually going out and connecting with people. And I don't have an answer to that. I don't, any of us. We are look, man, I just think that you are targeting the wrong problem, Nick. I think that our biggest problem right now doesn't have to do with this cultural divide or racial divide or religious divide or the idea that America is becoming less white or culturally relevant anymore. I think our biggest problem is literally an oligarchy that is inflaming every single division that we have.
And
by the way, and they're out for
El Sayed called Stevens an ogre in a Zoom meeting recently. Just another example that Stevens herself isn't really running a dirty campaign, but El Sayed is directly. Well, to be fair, if it's a Zoom meeting, then I don't know if that's like a public call. I would have to see the context too of that ogre thing. Yeah.
for you, man. Just
I know.
much as anybody else.
Well, and I agree.
But I'm
So
saying-
those platforms that we talk about that you're now allowed to be on because Elon's out on the platform. Elon doesn't give
His defense part was that he was talking about Fetterman. Okay.
a shit about anything other than one thing.
But Hunter, I just want to
money.
say, real quick,
Money and
Well,
his money.
I don't necessarily even agree with that.
Okay, well,
Okay,
you
but
may not
real quick,
agree with
back
that
to what I was
because you
saying.
don't
So
want to piss off
you're-
Elon Musk.
That's not, Elon doesn't even like me, but I just
you're
disagree.
talking about the oligarchy, right? Like
Yeah.
these billionaires, right?
Yeah.
Like the goal of corporate capture of these industries is community collapse. They are trying to engineer things to make it antisocial. They want to eliminate every single small business. They want to make everyone
Like, we're never going to be able to fix these problems if it's always going to be some goofy, evil billionaire guy or some goofy, evil corporation that's engineering our collapse. Like,
But why would they even want this?
I mean, like, in a way, they want it because they want to maximize, like, time on their platforms. But, like, the reality is that we have to grapple with the fact that human beings can't make good choices in all environments. That's just not the case. life is about putting yourself in places where you're going to make good decisions. And if your entire environment has been kind of like constructed for you to fail, so you've got your infinite temptation with infinite social media things and online shit and, you know, drugs or whatever the fuck else, like you're always going to fail in those environments. And we have to have a critical conversation about, like, okay, well, what kind of environment should like a human being in the United States even be in? And we're not going to get there by just blaming greedy corporations. It's just, but whatever.
A single person shopper, no carpooling, like to be a lonely consumer who only buys things for themselves online and doesn't talk to anyone in real life. That's what they want in real life. Like all this data center shit, like everything they're doing is in a way trying to break up in-person engagement. And I feel like for you guys, it might be hard to answer because both of you guys are what they call like controversial public figures. Like there's places that you, like in 2018, if you were to go to a dive bar in, let's say, Poplar Bluff, Missouri, you would have been in danger. You know what I mean? At that time. For you were in danger physically in a left-wing city. It's just the truth.
I love you.
So I feel like you guys have been deprived of the ability to have normal lives. You especially, you know, but I mean you in general, but I feel like, you know, your controversies came a little bit later in life. For you, I feel like you haven't even been able to grow up as a normal person. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, that's true. Well, and in terms of, you know, building community back and everything like that, you know, the data says that really the loss of society is the fact that we don't encounter people anymore. For example, on your way to work or, you know, in ways that are unexpected. People wake up in their house, which is separate from everybody else. They get in their car by themselves, drive to work by themselves, you know, and then they meet with their colleagues and everything, but then they go right home, have a beer, watch Netflix until they go to bed. Next day starts all over again. And so, you know, I think it has a lot to do with maybe how we structure the cities.
We love you too,
I think
Jader.
honestly, a big part of it, there's like this abundance mindset with liberals. Liberals want to have prosperity and everything like that. How can you have that when the cities are not safe? I think that one of the ways, for example, if you want to have those encounters that are unplanned or spontaneous, they're going to happen maybe on the subway, on the bus, on your way to work. People don't want to ride the subway anymore. People don't want to ride the bus. They don't
I just feel
like
that
it's
if
safe.
you look at the data, like right now, 2026, I think 2025 had the lowest homicide rate of any year in America for like the past 4 years. I feel like if you compare data from the 90s, like the cities, I get what you're saying, but the cities I have noticed are a lot safer. They're also, you know, becoming more expensive as well. It could have something to do with it.
You're absolutely right. It's what you're saying, Nick, is impossible to refute, right? Because everybody has an experience with violence or witnessing a crime, or whether it's just in their local newspaper or not. Is that I don't think that is in any way limited to only urban environments. I take the top 10 poorest red states in the country, and their crime rates are 10 times what many urban centers are.
So you'd be comparing like West Virginia, coal country, disenfranchised to like an urban neighborhood.
Yeah, in terms of per capita crime, in terms of per capita murder, in terms of per capita child sexual abuse, yeah. I think the things that people really care about, you know, things like that, is their own personal safety.
Yeah.
It is not limited to African-American urban or Latino-American urban environments. It's not. It exists. Carjackings do happen, but you know where they happen? They happen in Biloxi, Mississippi, just as much as they happen in Chicago.
I'm skeptical of that.
I mean, I just think the idea of like safety at risk,
way,
crime has been, I feel like media has overblown the level of danger.
Everybody's going to fact check both of us on this, and but I agree with you. But my point about
the reason why you're skeptical of that is because you have no idea what the actual crimes. You don't really know what's happening anywhere, right? Besides what's outside your own window, you don't really know. So the only way that you get information about that is by what people tell you. So if you don't know about that, if you don't know any of those numbers, it's just because it's not being shown to you. You know.
All of it is, though, is that you can always point to a reason, Nick. There's never been a time in which there hasn't been crime in major urban areas where you pack a lot of people in. You're
true.
right, though, is that the difference between us feeling like each other were our neighbors and that we can find some common ground is the fact, you know, you can live in existence now and by the time you're 56 years old and never really have to leave your house to make a living, to, you know, you don't go to the community center anymore. And I don't know how to fix that. And I certainly don't know how to fix it in the age of AI.
Politics, right? Because community is like an essential human need, if not the most important thing. So when you are deprived of that, you're more likely to look for a radical solution and be like, everything's broken, we need to try something really out there. So you might embrace something more reactionary on left or right to be like, fuck this, you know, we need something new. And I'm not trying to draw this like male loneliness, like incel pipeline that the media.
I think you have to be careful when you talk about stuff like this because he's saying these things and then Nick is kind of like nodding along, but like we in this point, I would imagine everybody here considers Nick is the reactionary radical, but I don't think he considers his politics reactionary or radical. So, but I don't know though.
tries to do all the time. But do you see a connection there between like people being lonely and having less friends and subcultural
absolutely.
choice taking over community value systems or community engagement and people just like driving to the extreme?
100%. I think social dislocation is probably the number one problem of our times, because you look at the young people, and you're right, it is one of those essential human needs, is to connect and have that sense of familiarity, to be seen, to see and to be seen. And that's something young people don't have. And I think, by the way, you look at the way young people socialize and even the mentality, I think a lot of young people have this absolute drive to go to college. Why? It's an extension of high school. And what do high school and college have in common? It's a community. You're in the quad. You can see and be seen. There's sort of like a status, reputation. You're constantly involved with other people. And I think everybody, young people, look at when they graduate from college like falling off a cliff and now life is over. Because now you just have your job, the gym, and going back home, and that's it. And this is why a lot of young people then want to move to the big cities. Got to go to New York, got to go to Chicago or LA where it's happening. And they want to get a condo or an apartment downtown because they want to go to the bar scene and extend college a little bit longer. And I think that's just not really a sustainable way to have a society. There has to be a way for people to still have that sense of community outside of, let's say, college and high school, even into their adulthood, and then into their old age. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest problems going on. And I agree. I think it drives, even to your point about the whites-only community in Arkansas, I think it is driving these, let's call it ghettoization or insulation of people going into these artificial values-based communities.
Yeah.
Because where are you going to find people? Go online. Go online, start spouting about politics, or, even not just for incels and right-wingers, but even on the left. Someone like Tyler Robinson, he's on Discord. He's on Discord with all of the Overwatch players and all the LGBTQ or whatever. And I think that, there's a tendency there where everybody kind of amplifies some of the resentment or feelings there. So I agree, that's a huge driver.
So for you, like back in high school when you were like first kind of starting to use the internet and all that, did you build most of your community in person outside Chicago, or was it mostly online?
When I was in high school or college?
High school.
The high school, I had real friends in Model UN. That was my favorite thing. So that was.
But you were still creating like some kind of content. At
New
that time.
McConnell
Not in high
pick
school,
drop.
no.
Okay, so you went to BU.
Yes.
Were most of your friends like?
Why are they doing this? Why can't they do like a 30-second video or call or something? Why do they have to make it the most shady possible thing in the universe?
Because he's dead, man.
Jesus.
He's fucking dead, dude.
I wonder if he's on like assisted living, or not like a ventilator or something, and they can't take him off oxygen for that long before he starts to like lose. So like, okay, take a deep breath, and then we're gonna take it out, and then let's go.
Classmates there? Like when did you start to kind of build your online persona and community around your content?
It wasn't until I left college. So to that point, I had friends in college. And then when I left college and started my show independently, then it was all people online. And everybody I knew was people from my community for the most part.
But your cancellation from mainstream platforms was effectively the same thing as like a community collapse for your personal life, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even say it was just the cancellation, but even more just returning home from college.
What do you think would have happened to you, like career-wise and personal life-wise, if you never would have been mainstreamed? I mean, I guess removed from major social media platforms.
Oh, it'd be a lot easier to make friends. Let's say, because, being banned on Instagram, you might as well be dead. In Generation Z, that's how everybody sees each other, meets each other, talks to each other. So I think I probably have a wider, livelier circle.
Do you feel like you had less friends after that?
No, I'd say it's about the same.
No, but I mean, you said that you feel like it would have been easier to make friends.
It would have been easy to make more friends, yeah, sure.
So aside from your career, how was your personal and social life affected in those following years?
Well, it's brutal, I mean, because everybody that I knew from high school is on Instagram, on Facebook, and I'm just not on there. It's almost like you're removed from the earth. For Generation Z, I understand for older people, for different generation, people still meet up or stay in touch in other ways. But if you're not online as a young person, you might as well be dead.
Do you think you would have said some of the more extreme things that you did say if you, I guess, were allowed to remain on the mainstream internet?
Absolutely, yeah.
Looking back, and I'm not trying to get you to take something back necessarily, what's one thing that you said when you were younger where you're like, fuck, wish I could take that back?
I don't know if I regret what I've said. It's just how you say it.
Yeah, can you think of an example of when you listen back to something and you're like, geez, I wish I could.
Yeah. So I did this rally in 2023 called Fuentes Rally 2. And the one comment I said, we're talking about a spiritual battle between Christians and everybody else. And I said, we're in a holy war. Yeah. I said, and we're going to make them die in a holy war. And the second I said that, I was like, didn't mean to say that. It's an extemporaneous.
Wait, real quick. Can somebody do a film? Is it Filmnot or Filmrot or whatever? What's that website? You know what I'm talking about? You can search through all the YouTube comments or all the things that a person said on YouTube. Filmot. I'm just curious. Can somebody search through like, oh fuck, my VODs aren't open anymore. Or I guess my videos and then Hassan's videos. And I guess like Vosh or Hutch or Josiah. How many times do people use that phrase? I know I've heard it before, but I feel it's not that common to hear that phrase like they've signed their death warrant. I'm trying to think if I've ever used this. I'm sure I have at least once, but I'm very curious. Somebody go look and tell me.
A speech. So you don't rehearse it, you just say things. And I was like, didn't mean that, shouldn't have said that. So it's always the how, it's always in the delivery that I...
Nick, I can think of about 4 things that I really wish you would take back right now. But
Like
we're
what?
gonna do. The cookies in the oven?
Well, that's a joke.
But it's not, Nick. My wife is Jewish. My son is Jewish. No, Nick. I promise you. Don't get mad.
I'm not mad,
Okay,
it's
I know. But okay. But you gotta understand how incredibly, whether it's a joke or not, it's a lived experience passed down from generation to generation, whether or not, and by the way, not just from the Holocaust, not just from 1939 on, 2,000 years of history, okay? Forget about Israeli politics and Netanyahu, because I think we agree about Bibi Netanyahu. I'm positive we do. And I've listened to you talk about it. But you gotta understand, look at me, man.
I see.
It hurts. It hurts.
Does it?
Nick, I promise you it does. When you compare my wife's family to cookies going to an oven, it hurts. And you've got to understand that. And by the way, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
And I believe that you do know that.
See, that's where you
Nick,
lose me. That's where you lose me.
Okay, Nick. Okay, I'm telling you.
Well, listen, are we here to talk or are you here to lecture me and preach
Okay, no,
to
you're
me?
right. Let me listen.
Okay.
Listen, you're right.
So
You're right.
this is the
Okay.
thing, because, you know, and I think this is a disconnect. I think that the left and even people on the right, they're losing the young people. Why do people love me? Not in spite of, but because of the outrageous things that I say. Not in spite of, but because I say offensive things. Because I, let's say, drop the N-word on a video or something. Okay. It's because people are sick of the preachiness, the
Nick.
lecturing.
Okay, I'll listen
they
to what
really
you
are.
say. But Nick, I disagree. I think that you're appealing to the lowest common.
Okay, for Vosh, we've got 4 mentions of death warrant in the past 6 years. The other one didn't load for me. Fuck. I'm curious for other political figures. What else did you want besides sign their death warrant? Oh, just a death warrant thing. That Austin Knox or whatever, Hassan's editor, put out that when people are real mad that Whitmer endorsed Haley Stevens, and he dropped that tweet where it was like, she just signed her death warrant with this. I'm like, I feel like that's pretty like, considering that Biden got in trouble for saying we have to put a bullseye over some state, especially also considering that Whitmer had a fucking kidnapping plot against her that was foiled. I feel like that's kind of like a crazy, I just feel like it's a crazy expression to use right now.
Denominator of thought. If you're hating on the people that they think are the reason for their suffering, then you must be on their side. I don't think that you believe that about the Holocaust. I think you think the Holocaust did happen. But forget about whether or not you think that it is used politically in a way that is obtuse and wrong. But I think that you do believe that. And I think that you have to. Like, what's your cultural heritage?
I'm Italian, Mexican, and Irish.
Mexican. When did they come in Italian? When did the Mexicans come? When did the Irish come?
Mexicans came turn of the last century.
Yeah.
Italians came in the 1860s.
Yeah.
Irish came in the early 1900s.
Okay, so maybe you wouldn't care about something that is like grossly offensive just on the face of it and think that, oh, why can't people just believe that that's funny? But you got to understand, it's from the perspective of somebody that has that trauma, and I think that there is such a thing as generational trauma, and those stories are passed down generation to generation. When you say something like that, they completely shut off. They can't hear another thing that you're saying about this cultural disconnect, about losing communities, about the feeling of being left out or left behind in a world in which there no longer is this sense of community. All the other things that you say. Everybody else is left. And what you do pick up, you pick up the ones that hear the dog whistle. You pick up the ones that say, yeah, that's the way that I feel, because it's radical. It's like he's willing to say the thing that nobody else will say in this environment. And then you get, an enormous amount of niche, but love.
I don't know why it ever became acceptable to say niche as niche. And I hear a lot of people do that. Don't know what's going on there.
From that. And I don't, but I just don't believe that you believe that. I don't believe that you think that it was appropriate for you to say something like that. I don't think you believe that it's appropriate to say women shouldn't vote.
Let's give Nick a second to respond to the first thing.
I know I talk constantly. That's how I do this.
It's all good. It's all good.
I apologize.
I get it, and I understand that perspective, and it is offensive, and it is provocative, and that's sort of what makes it funny. I mean, what we would say in our generation is edgelording. We're being edgy. We're being provocative. And I think that it is that kind of overbearing sense for our entire...
Nick, I'm the king of edgelord.
Well, in a certain way.
Let's let Nick explain
I know.
the psychology behind edgelording.
It's that overbearingness that my generation's had our entire lives. That's not appropriate. That's not funny. Think of the trauma. That's racist. That's white supremacist. That makes it funny. That makes it different, interesting. And let me grant, by the way, I think that now, and this is maybe a concession towards you, now that my kind of humor has become mainstream and popular, I don't even think that that's funny anymore. People do the edgelording thing. It's become so commonplace and so tired. I don't think it's that funny or impressive. That's a big part of why I kind of moved past it, because 10 years ago, it was treated like sacrilegious. And there's something funny about the fact that you could say a word or make a joke and make people lose their minds and freak out. And it was like an international incident if you said the wrong thing. And I think that's what made it tempting, especially for a young person. You want to rebel. You want to be defiant. You want to be a little revolutionary or something. Now it's time.
I understand now why like humor is one of the most pro-social things that you can demonstrate, and why it makes people so, I guess, endeared to you. I think as humans, I feel like we're just naturally really wired to really like people that are funny. And the more that I see people talk about humor, the more I kind of get it. I feel like people really don't understand humor, or rather, like when I say they don't understand it, I mean they can't like intellectualize it or explain it on a cognitive level. It's just a thing that you feel, because the way that humor is explained sometimes is just so stupid, and nobody ever seems to understand like how dumb it's being explained. Like I've said this a million times, it's like what is the joke? What is so funny about it? People get away with so much by just saying, oh well, it's humor, it's funny, it's edgy, and it's like, why is it humorous? Why is it funny? Why is it edgy? It seems like people just give that like, oh, it's edgy, lol. And then that's it. And it's like, well, what are we doing here? Like, what's the purpose of like why it's edgy? Because there's a lot of edgy things that we could say that aren't funny. So why are some things funny and some things aren't funny? There's something else that's going on there. Like humor tends to work on a couple different levels of like, it's not just about subverting expectations. Like if you think about a joke, I don't know. Like yesterday, I went to the hospital to pick up my girl. I can't think of anything. I'm not funny. I can't think of humor off the top of my head. But like when you tell a joke, think of like a standard joke. If you tell a joke, it's not just that you're saying something that subverts maybe the expectation of what's to be said, but the thing that you insert to the answer is a thing that is also some kind of like comment. Like it has to work on all these levels in order for it to be like a humorous thing. Like I went to school to pick up my girlfriend. The pedo joke I'm on Twitter. I went to school to pick up my girlfriend. Oh, okay. Like, what time does she stop teaching? Like, oh, teaching? No, she's a student there. Blah blah blah. Right? It's not just funny because you're subverting the answer. You're also subverting the answer with a thing that's also funny because of like another reason. Like, this is like how the humor works on all these different levels. It's annoying because every time a thing is brought up, like, oh, what about the cookies in the oven joke? Or why did you, oh, well, it was just humorous. It was just edgy. Well, what do you mean by humorous or edgy? The reason why it was funny was because, your people believe that the Holocaust is an unchallengeable narrative in all of society. And when you're able to challenge that narrative and make people feel uncomfortable doing it, you're kind of proving the point that, some narratives society is deemed beyond taking down, and Jewish people use this as an advantage to push their own program and blah, 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 right? Like, this is the funny part. But nobody ever gets to that part of the conversation. It's very frustrating.
Rebel. You want to be defiant. You want to be a little revolutionary or something. Now, as time has gone on, I think that's become a fad. Everybody does it. It's lost its power. And I think that, by the way, part of why we're getting less of it is because instead of getting the preachy lecture from the left saying that's not appropriate, people just roll their eyes. Now, when an edgy white person says the N-word, people roll their eyes and go, really? That joke again? People hear someone wears a Nazi costume, makes a Holocaust joke. People go, really? That joke again? It's not impressive. It's not funny anymore. We've seen it before. And ironically, that is what makes you get less of it, when you disempower those things by not giving them this over-the-top reaction, pretending like it's some great travesty.
So you think the new counterculture is going to be woke again?
No, I think it's a synthesis.
A synthesis of post-edgelordism and wokeism?
Yes, because I think that wokeism had its
me.
excesses.
Yeah.
Edgelording also has its excesses. And I think now we're finding a middle ground between saying the edgiest thing we can think of with no regard for anyone and saying everything everything is racist. You know, if you say something, you should lose your job. We're finding a middle ground where, you know, maybe it's tastefully offensive in small doses, less is more.
So it sounds like you believe in the survival of the American experiment.
Wait, what the fuck was that? Was that Mutin?
In small doses, less is more. So
Was it Hunter? What
it
was
sounds
that?
like you.
tastefully offensive in small doses, less is more.
So it sounds like you believe in the survival of the American experiment.
Yeah, I really do. And listen, I don't think everything about wokeism was bad necessarily.
What's the best thing about wokeism?
I think that genuinely it has made people more respectful and empathetic. Because let's be honest, 20 years ago, let's say when I was growing up, I think there was a lot of cruelty. And I think there were some hateful attitudes. And I think as time has gone on, this younger generation, they may not be even left-wing. They may not be what you'd consider woke. But I think they are respectful of people that have different ideas or, you know, a different way of life or from a different culture. You know, we make jokes all the time about the fact that I'm like a far-right guy and I'm Mexican. People say I'm a white supremacist, I'm Mexican. And people make a joke that a lot of far-right people are Hispanic. And I think that's a consequence that there's very little genuine racial hatred in anybody's DNA anymore, or any kind of hatred. And I think that's positive, but that went too far. I think some of the other stuff went too far as well.
Hablas español?
No, not a little bit, I guess, from high school.
Can you do a little bit?
Un poco.
Okay,
I don't
good.
speak it from my dad, so.
Did you grow up like around a lot of Mexicans?
No, all white people for the most part.
Did they know you were Mexican?
They did. And not gonna lie, I mean, people made fun of me for that.
What'd they say?
Well, like, for example, one time when I was in Model UN, I was entering high school as a freshman. They looked at my name on the roster without knowing me. And they told me this after the fact, the leadership of the club. They said, oh, we thought you were just some Mexican kid, so we gave you a bad committee assignment.
Wow.
But see, I heard that and I laughed. I said, that's funny. You know, whereas a lot of people would say, oh, that's traumatic. I'm a victim of racism. You know, I think that's, you know, it's just a human thing.
Yeah, I always felt like growing up as like a white kid in America.
What if you went, wait, what if you were and identified as being Mexican and they came to you and they didn't tell you that's the reason that they gave you all the bad committee assignments?
That would be unfair.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm just saying.
That's the whole point, isn't it?
And
so
I'm
you
not-
may find it funny because you pass as
Yeah,
a
'cause it doesn't affect
white
you.
Anglo-Christian.
Do you think I pass?
What?
You think I pass as a white Anglo-Christian?
Well,
Absolutely.
I don't
In the
think you
United
pass, I think you
States-
identify as it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. No, but really, for real. And my point is that I heard you do an interview, okay? And I literally on the write up here, it's like you were talking about how you were raised on like Mark Levin in high school.
Right.
And the thing that you liked the most about Mark Levin is how cruel he was to the callers.
Jesus.
I don't see. I don't
Mark
get.
Levin, I think, he would fill in for Rush sometimes, or am I thinking of somebody different? Who's the British sounding guy that used to fill in for Rush sometimes? I was picking up my my Vyvanse prescription a week or two ago, and there was some lady being a crazy fucking Karen in line. She was like it was obvious that a lady had come up and asked for a prescription and then walked away and then come back, and the pharmacist was like, "Oh, I can help you." And then anytime somebody gets cut off from the line and they were in line, it just like sets people the fuck off. And after she walked up, the other lady that came in, this other lady was like she was like, she hadn't asked for help, but she was like clearly like loudly kind of, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. She looked at me and she recognized me. And she was like, oh, my son or whatever, I think watches your stuff or something. And then she told me she lives, her next door neighbor, I think she said, was Mark Levin. And she thought it was interesting, but she wasn't sure what my politics are. And then she asked me, and I was like super far left. It was a very odd encounter. And then I felt bad because now I felt like it looked like my fan was the one who was acting out in the CVS.
That I like the joke about the cookies. It may be a joke and it may be edgelording and you may not really mean it, but
Oh, she said Mark Levin, but I'm thinking of or something Levin, whatever Levin. But I'm thinking of Mark Stein, I think, is the one who used to fill in for Rush all the time, I think is who I was thinking of.
you got to realize the cruelty to it. And without going like, oh, like, you know, wham, like, you know, people got to stop crying about the past. And that's the thing, is that I think that you have such an opportunity to talk to a generation of disaffected, angry, legitimately angry people in a way in which is is positive without having to do that shit. And by the way, and I'm not holding you responsible for like, you know.
Why do you say super far left all the time? When I'm distinguishing between, for my own political views? Because compared to a normal person, I'm probably pretty far left, like especially in fucking Florida.
The end of you know, my conception of Western civilization, which is different than yours, but I just don't get it. I don't get why you find the cruelty. And I think that, by the way, I think that that's why you like Trump. I mean, I'm making, you know, like a very unfair leap, because his first instinct is cruelty. His first instinct is to find the fault in the other. About everything, by the way. It's not his fault that that we're in a war with Iran that he's ended 38 times and, you know, and started 39. It's not his fault that inflation's high. It's not his fault that the wall didn't get built. It's not his fault that ICE is killing people on the streets in these places. It's the cruelty of it. Maybe it's a generational thing. I got friends who are Jewish that are going to be really, really fucking pissed off that I'm sitting next to you. And what do I tell them? What do I tell them why it's okay for me to sit?
Oh, Jew. Remind me after this interview, Jew.
And have this conversation with you.
I guess I just have such a different opinion of that. You know, why should we have to explain ourselves to talk to anybody? And why is it that saying the wrong words or making a particular joke makes it so the Jewish person wouldn't want to watch my show? I have a lot of Jewish fans. I mean, some of my best friends are Jewish. I've had Jewish employees, and they recognize that, you know, just because I'm not necessarily nice all the time doesn't mean I'm hateful, doesn't mean, I don't even think they see it as cruel. I think they see it as it's a little rough around the edges. And maybe that's the difference, is I guess it's just attributing this weight to something that be considered a joke and maybe doesn't have a cruel intention behind it. Like, you know, Mark Levin, you got to remember at the end of the day, it's an entertainment show. It's entertainment. People call in, he gets frustrated with them. It's part of what I do on my show. And it's not always nice, but it's funny. And I don't think it's mean-spirited necessarily, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. So, I mean, the thought that I would, like, for example, with you, people would say, why do you talk to Hunter Biden? His father and his DOJ froze your money and put you on a no-fly list. I'd say, so what? I mean, it's just talking. I don't think talking's a big deal. You know?
Froze my money and put me on a no-fly list, too.
There you go. See, so we got that in common.
So a different question that I have that kind of weaves everything together. How do you think, like, October 7th and the subsequent, like, pro-Palestine movement and the online worlds it created led to a growing audience on the right?
October 7th in particular?
Yeah.
Well, I think it highlighted and brought to the forefront how captured the right wing is by Israel, which is very unique. I think the Democrats and the Republicans are pro-Israel, but the Republican Party has this inextricable institutional connection with the Israel lobby, with this Likud government in particular. And I think people just started to see the hypocrisies. The hypocrisy was brought to the forefront, which is America first, but not with Israel. No new wars except for with Iran.
Under Trump, we will have no more
Venezuela,
wars, wars, no more wars.
They said he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone.
You know, we're going to be racist and all these things, but don't you dare be anti-Semitic. Don't even, you know, think about it.
I see good things about Hitler also. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
So I think that on the right wing, it made it unignorable that there's this ideological institutional capture.
I just feel like a lot of straightforward, like, just anti-Semite influencers were taking advantage of the post-October 7th discourse to push other ideas, broader ideas about Jewish people as a whole.
Come out and say it. Like, I think that Jews are causing a disproportionate amount of problems in the United States.
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to ignore some of those other conversations. I know that it's now become maybe in vogue to say that the Israel issue is very narrow. It's just Netanyahu. It's just the Likudniks. It's just the Israel lobby. But, you know, what would you say about someone like Larry Ellison? I mean, somebody like that, I don't think fits neatly into this, let's say, problem of Netanyahu.
As far as installing Barry Weiss and whatnot.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Because this is somebody who's not Israeli. He's not even a religious Jew, but he's ethnically Jewish and has this deep affinity for the state of Israel.
You know, I feel a deep emotional connection to the state of Israel and the Israeli people.
And is using and mobilizing his power and resources and connections to benefit Israel in the private sector. And so if you were to say, what's a law that we could pass to prevent that kind of influence, what would it look like? He's an American citizen. He can't buy a media company and hire Barry Weiss to run CBS News. And yet we recognize that's a big problem.
I just feel the conflation of like anti-Zionism and like Holocaust denial played into the hands of the Israeli propaganda apparatus. Because then they can say, hey, look, these people that oppose what we're doing in Palestine also don't think the Holocaust happened. It's a big jump in the public perception.
It all benefits the Jews at the end of the day.
It was almost to me as if that was your intent. To lose any legitimacy about any argument as it relates to Israel and the Likud government is to say those edgelording things or whatever.
Jews are money changers, bullshit artists, psychopaths, charlatans, grifters, manipulators.
I don't know anybody that can hear you after you say that, including myself. It delegitimizes everything because I don't think that you... a little bit of more compassion.
Let's try to stay a little. I don't want to do any character attacks on Nick.
I'm not attacking his character. You say that, including myself. It delegitimizes everything because I don't think that you. A little bit of more compassion.
Let's try to stay a little. I don't want to do any character attacks on Nick.
I'm not.
I don't. Are they going to reference what he said? Why would you cut out? Okay.
I'm not attacking his character. I'm not attacking. I promise you. I'm
no,
not.
But as far as compassion, I more just mean straightforward. Do you feel like the rise in anti-Semitic online influencers post October 7th has given Israel more ammunition to work with in terms of casting everyone who opposes what they're doing as just like a rabid Jew hater?
In some cases.
That's such a crazy. That's such a crazy way to phrase that issue, I guess. Like, we need to have a serious conversation about anti-Semitism in the United States of America and how that's being used to benefit the Jews in Israel. Okay.
Yeah, in some cases, sure. But I also think that's overstated because I think that, look, let's just be honest. I do believe the political left wants to make the Israel issue very narrow. And they want to say that the issue is this genocide in Palestine. And on some level, they think that the Israeli government is racist.
You f***ing baying pig! You bloodthirsty, violent pig dog!
And that's the problem.
Hassan
and I think that ignores that there is a broader conversation, and it does have to do with the Holocaust, and it does have to do with Jews as such, and Jewish nationalism and Jewish identity. So to try to shoehorn it in and say, well, if anybody goes further than this very narrow critique of Israel, well, they're actually helping Israel, I don't agree with that. I think we have to unpack the whole conversation.
Well, do you care a lot about Palestinians?
Not more than I care about anybody else.
So I guess that would be why that they would be like, okay, you're just taking advantage of this discourse.
I don't think it's taking advantage. I think that we can sympathize with the Palestinians while also realizing that, look, I'm an American. And so it's a tragedy what's happening in Palestine, but there's tragedies happening all over the world. My problem is that Israel has this influence over our government.
I'm a newcomer to politics, but not to backing the Jewish state.
And we're paying for the genocide, and we're furnishing them with the weapons to commit the genocide. And by the way, America is going to be held liable for this genocide, morally, but also politically and diplomatically and otherwise. But I think that people on the left, they may be guilty of maybe caring more about Palestine than they do about America.
Nick, but the left didn't cancel you. The right canceled you first. The right canceled you first, and Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, and those were the people that canceled. They may have utilized the tools of the left, or what you call the left, to be able to do that, but it was the right that canceled you. And by the way, what I would consider a radical right. The Daily Wire, to me, is a radical right.
I don't think they're even reactionary. I don't think they're that conservative at all. Ben Shapiro, I mean, he's not. Like, he's in favor of mass migration.
In 2016, they were alt-right.
No, they were not.
Not even close. Not even close. Ben Shapiro. Oh no, that's fine. He's not familiar. Ben Shapiro, alt-right. One of the hallmarks of being alt-right, they might admit this now, but they wouldn't in the past, is being anti-Semitic and believing that the Jews are controlling everything. That was like a pretty big part under the surface of like the alt-right stuff. Ben Shapiro, very explicitly, very specifically, is not like an alt-righter in that sense, and that he's literally fucking Jewish.
And the Daily Wire, they were to the right of Mitt Romney.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's what I mean. And that's
they
what
weren't
I'm
Mormon
saying.
conservatives.
Yeah. My point was, that's who you were canceled by.
I was also canceled by the left.
No, I know. They came along. They came along because some of the more egregious things that you said is edgelording, they came along. And whether you call it canceling or saying, like, what the fuck? This is what I call it. What the fuck? Like, what the fuck? You know, and so, like, I don't find it funny. And just like you're able to say, well, I just think it's funny, I'm able to say, I don't find it fucking funny. I didn't find it funny then, I don't find it funny now. I didn't find it funny that some of the things that, you know, you said about me. But I'm willing to sit here and listen to you because I want to get to this, and this is my whole point. What about fucking Donald Trump?
Yeah, we can get to that. Yeah,
How did you get, of all the people in the world, but you could look at and say he doesn't believe anything.
So for context for the viewer, Donald Trump is currently the sitting president of the U.S. For
Thanks.
our audience abroad, the war with Iran was
a lot of
supposed to be
people
over. Now we're
don't know
back in
that.
business,
Thank you,
baby.
true.
Khomeini had a pretty sick funeral, if you saw the video. So
Oh my
you guys don't like Trump? You
God.
used to like him.
I did.
You've always hated him.
The
He's trying to destroy
random
your
fucking
life.
Yeah.
You guys were cool. You guys hung out once at Mar-a-Lago with
Iranian
Kanye.
dick sucking.
You've never hung out with Trump.
I don't think it was ironic.
Right. Would you want to?
No.
If
No,
you-
do I want to? Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Look, man, I would, like, can we get him? Can we get him in the motel room?
So I want you to imagine.
Let's get him in the
I want you to
motel.
imagine he's in the motel with us.
Yeah.
That's Trump. What do you want to? What do you want to ask him?
Oh, you know, put me on the spot. I don't want to ask Donald Trump anything because I know, and I think you would agree with me, is that Donald Trump isn't going to give me an authentic answer. Donald Trump never gives an authentic answer. He gives what people refer to as being authentic, but it's not authentic, it's audacious.
True.
It's like the example that I give that is the best metaphor for this is that he says he's 6'3", weighs 225 pounds. And everybody laughs because that's a little bit like edgelording, right? Everybody knows that he is maybe 6 feet and weighs maybe 300. 285?
He's a big guy. He's a pretty big guy.
Yeah, big guy. But by virtue of every picture ever taken of anyone that's 6'3", he's not 6'3".
I am.
Okay? Yeah, I know you are.
Thank you.
You're 6'2.5", maybe. That's maybe. But my point is that the reason I don't have a question for him is because I'm absolutely certain that he is not going to give me an authentic answer. Look, he came into the Oval Office and the transition this time. And he told my dad that he thought that he did an amazing job. He did an amazing job with the economy. He did an amazing job that with NATO, he did an amazing job and that he got a raw deal from his side and anything he could do, particularly for Hunter. Hunter got screwed. Whatever I could do, you let me know. Bullshit. He then went out and he has now since then done nothing but blame Joe Biden for every single one of his problems.
11 months ago, I inherited a mess. Joe Biden handed us over a country that was in very
shambles.
serious trouble. Biden gave us a horrible economy. And I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy.
He mentioned my dad's name or my family's name 6 times a day in the first 100 days of this administration. 6 times a day. He
It's
does
politics,
it maybe
bruh.
4 times a day now because he has no answers. All he has is a finger to point. And that's all he does. My point
I'm
is,
gonna
I
ask
don't
you-
know what to ask him. You know, why are you such a dick?
What does your dad think about the war?
Right? I'm not going to get into what my dad thinks about the war. Is it really because I don't want to get into I don't put words in my dad's mouth just like I wouldn't ask you what your dad thinks about the war, but your dad wasn't the president of the United States, which is
I'll
a little
answer
bit
you. I don't
different.
even know if you know what's going on.
You know,
I'm just an Eagles fan.
look,
You don't ever want to be in a position where you're like, especially Biden, who was the ex-president, like is going to be speaking for all the Dems if that comes out. That would be you would never want to. That would be really inappropriate to give.
all I can say is that every single Israeli prime minister since at least Jimmy Carter was president, has walked into the Oval Office or picked up the phone and called the president and said, we have to attack Iran. And every single one of them has said no. And they may not all have had the same exact reason, but one of the reasons they did is because they knew what the consequences would be as it relates to the lifeblood of the economy, is petroleum in the Straits of Hormuz. Every single one of them knew that. And every single one of them knew that there is no way, unless you send in ground forces, to end with certainty the nuclear program that the Iranians have supposedly been building. Every single one of them knew that the existing Ayatollah at that time, had put out a fatwa, an edict saying that they would never turn their nuclear technology into a bomb.
The supreme leader of Iran issued fatwa. Having nuclear weapons is forbidden, is haram, which means never we can have nuclear weapons.
It was a religious edict as strong as if the Pope had released an encyclical. But what did he do? He kills the Ayatollah. We get a son that now has a far more radical and far greater ties to the IRGC. And what do we have? The Straits of Hormuz are still closed. He said that they're brilliant people. I find that that's Donald Trump on everything. He said he'd end the war in Ukraine on day one.
That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president.
So the same thing about Hamas and Israel too.
Right, and say that's just bullshit. It's just bullshit. He said that he would build a wall. I don't believe in building a wall, but everybody said that's bullshit. And then when he got into office, the corruption, the level of the corruption. I mean, people believe.
What is Quran permitted lying called again? Can a fatwa fall under that? I don't think a fatwa could. I think it's called taqiyya. But the fatwas are like religious orders, basically, like that every Muslim, I think, theoretically is supposed to follow, no? I don't think you could issue a fatwa that's a lie. That would be weird. But also that taqiyya thing is supposed to be like, well, obviously everybody's going to argue over what it actually means based on their interpretation. But I think that's literally like in the Catholic Church, you know how you have like these martyrs. It's like somebody shows up and they want to kill you and your kids, and like, I believe in God, like, and then they kill and skin and boil alive all your children. And Catholics were like, oh my God, that's so based. I think Muslims were like, well, you know what? If somebody's threatening to kill you, if you don't denounce your faith or whatever, you can denounce your faith. It's okay. If you need to fucking survive, or for the or I think for the benefit of Islam as well, I believe you're allowed to lie if it helps to preserve, I think, your life or Islam. I think. Yeah, I don't know if a fatwa would ever fall under that. I'm not sure.
We're led to believe that there was this thing called the Biden crime family, right? I know that you know is that I didn't do a single piece of business when my dad was president. I made basically $200,000 a year selling paintings. I picked it.
A Shia fatwa is not recognized by Sunnis and vice versa. Yeah, I don't know who all can issue fatwas, but I think one of the big differences between Sunni and Shia is if you're a Shiite, you believe that you can trace the lineage of your leaders back to Muhammad. I don't know if that's always just the Ayatollah or what. I don't think every Shiite, like the Houthi families were like it was Al-Haidi or whatever branch of Shia Islam or something. I don't know. But like Sunnis, I think, don't believe you can trace the lineage back. I think I don't know how much that matters. I don't think it's only the big leader guy that can issue a fatwa. Like I think smaller people can too. I don't know who all can do it. I don't know. So go figure it out.
Thing that was the furthest possible thing away from politics.
Go look it up.
That
Google
I possibly could. Don and Eric have done over $1.3 billion in contracts, just in contracts for underlying companies that they have an ownership stake in with the Department of Defense.
Oh, Zaides?
Don Jr.
Was that
got
for
the largest
the
loan
Houthi, were
ever
their branch of
given
shit?
by the Department of Defense of a company that he bought into like 3 months before they got the loan. Because Peter Navarro picked up the phone and called DOD to get it done. My point is, I don't have anything productive to say to him that I know of. And when I listen to you, and I listen to what you do, my question is how did you not see that before? He was a disaster in 2020, a complete and utter disaster as it related to what he did with COVID, regardless of whether you think we were wearing a mask or not.
Mm-hmm. The question for Nick is, how did you not realize 6 years ago that Trump would be this sort of letdown?
Because he doesn't hold, there's no ideological core to Donald Trump.
No, I agree with you. Well, you got to realize in 2016 where Republicans were at. We had John McCain, we had Mitt Romney, and the perception on the right is that they were insufficiently conservative and that they were losers. All they do is lose because they don't fight. There was this perception that the Democrats are ruthless, fighters. Obama crushed in 2008, crushed when we thought he really should have lost in 2012. That was a Republican perception that Romney let us down. And so when Trump came on the scene in 2016, it was new, it was refreshing. He seemed like somebody that was really going to take on not just the Democrats, but also the media on our behalf. And what's more, you got to think about the mood of the moment in 16 as well and the message Trump was giving. Trump said in 16, it's just me and my son and my wife. We don't have any donors. We don't have any special interests.
More than $100 million put in of my money, meaning I'm not taking all of this big money from all of these different corporations like she's doing.
We're going to put America first, make the country great again. This is a very appealing message. And I talk all the time on my show about it and realizing now that it was obviously a scam and now obviously unfulfilled completely. And you're right.
Wait, real quick. Efficiency modules that reduce the energy consumption, do they reduce pollution as well?
Trump is non-ideological. The message was brilliant because it said, one, the system is broken. America's not great anymore, but it used to be. We can make it great again, but in order to do it, we need to actually bypass the system. Why is it that we never have victories? Why is it that things don't change? Because of money. He said, and that's why I'm different. I'm rich. I'm a billionaire. If I self-fund my campaign and don't take super PAC money, then I won't have to listen to the lobbyists and the special interests. I could fire the people I need to fire, do the things I need to do. That was like a very powerful message in 2016. And after 4 years, I was one of the people even back then that said, look, it never materialized. He did wind up taking super PAC money. He took AIPAC money for that matter, Sheldon Adelson money at that time in 16. Even in the first term, bombed Iran. In the first term, didn't build the wall. In the first term, didn't even reduce illegal immigration until 2019. And I remember the timeline perfectly because I covered it every day. It was like in May and June 2019, 20-year illegal immigration high in terms of month over month. But why did I go for him in 2020? At the height of the pandemic, we all thought on the right that if anyone other than Trump was president, you were going to get a vaccine mandate, which we really didn't want to be forced to take the vaccine. We thought the lockdown might never end. We thought that censorship would kick into overdrive. And so we said, really, it's unacceptable that anyone other than Trump would just be a disaster. And then obviously Biden came in, and I don't think it was as bad as we thought it would be, to tell you the truth, honestly. But by 2024, I mean, I was out. In 2024, because everything you're saying is totally true. And I was telling people on my side, I was saying he's not going to build the wall. And I know you're against that. He's not going to do the mass deportations, promising that. He's not going to start no new wars. I said in 24, he's going to take us to war in Iran. And the Ukraine war, I said, that's not going to end in one day. Too complicated. We're already in it. And so I didn't vote. I didn't vote in 2024. And I told my followers not to vote for Trump for that reason. And it was only until a year later, after all the exuberance died down and people saw the bearing of the Epstein files, the war in Iran, people said, you know what? You were right. You were right about Trump. Even Alex Jones told me you were right about Trump. I was all in on him. So, I mean, as far as him being vaporware is concerned and a scammer and fundamentally, you're 100% right. No ideological core. He's not an ideological guy. Yeah, it is. He's
literally all about him.
And I agree. He's a cruel narcissist.
Yeah.
And you said I like the cruelty. I do not like the cruelty.
No, by the way, no. I didn't say you like the cruelty. I said I'm listening to your thing, and you said one of the things that you liked about Levin was the cruelty. And not for the cruelty's sake, it didn't seem to me like this, is because it was raw.
Dazzling,
it was, yeah. And that's, so I'm not saying that.
No, but I agree. I think he is cruel. And even what he said on Easter, I mean, we're Catholic. On Easter Sunday, he says we're going to annihilate Iran. And then he made fun of Allah on Easter Sunday. So, you know, that kind of stuff, it just totally turned me off entirely.
Is there anything that you think Trump can do to like regain the support of the, I guess, Gen Z and millennial right?
No, it's over. People see what he's made of. And Hunter's right. He's a liar. He is a liar. He is a bullshit artist. And especially, you look at what he did with the Epstein files, with the war in Iran, what he did to Thomas Massie.
This guy named Thomas Massie. There's something wrong with him. They just vote no. They love voting no. They think it's good politically.
You realize that if you are America first, you have no place in this Republican Party. Because he said it. He said our Republican Party, or rather, he said MAGA is Mark Levin, Laura Loomer.
Nick completely concedes here. I mean, maybe. Hunter was pushing on the right point, though. And this is the same issue that I actually had last night with Josiah and Pisco. And it's a big issue that I have a lot of people. Is there's a big price to pay when you want to be correct at the correct time with something. You have to pay a political price for that. It's not popular to do or say the thing, but you want to move the political winds in that direction. I don't appreciate bandwagoners that didn't have the bravery to say it initially, but then want to hop on afterwards and then try to claim that they've like adjusted course. It's like, no, you haven't adjusted course. You're just following what's popular to make money. I'm not saying that Josiah or Pisco do that. I'm just saying that like with the idea of like giving Kyle Kulinski credit for coming around on how horrible Trump is. It's like, well, everybody that should have known knew that initially. You don't get to collect, this is the same issue I had also with like Vosh lying about me, for instance. You don't get to tell all these insane lies about me and then correct, or just be wrong about like crazy media shit in general. You don't get to do all of that. And then, you know, once you realize that you lied or you fucked up or you did something wrong or whatever, and then at the end of all that be like, oh, well, actually, I'm going to course correct. And then your audience goes, wow, well, at least he's honest. He's so great that he's honest and he's able to course correct. It's like, well, how do you get virtue on both ends of that? You were wrong when you knew you shouldn't have been wrong. And then you course correct when it's popular to do so. And your audience congratulates you for both. What?
So you appreciate Kissinger
God. Yes, Kinzinger. Yeah, that's why I brought up Kinzinger and Cheney, because Liz and Adam came out and they destroyed their whole political careers. Yeah, this is not proportional to power consumption, is it? This says max energy consumption is 77.5. This is 155. This is twice the consumption, but it's one less pollution. I don't think it is directly proportional to energy consumption, unless it's an energy consumption per machine. There's like a hidden variable there.
Andy Fine, he said, and who is not.
If these efficiency modules don't reduce pollution, it's going to be some bans flying in chat.
Not MAGA, Megyn Kelly, Tucker, Alex Jones, Candace. And I think most Republicans said, well, we're with those other people.
Oh, sorry. The reason why I'm bringing up here that I don't know how I feel about this Nick stuff saying that he's totally conceding is because everybody who knew politics knew how bad Trump was going to be coming in. It's not fair that you could cheerlead him or support him, which I don't even think Nick did actually that much in 2024. I'm sure he was salty for a lot of different reasons and he didn't. But for the people that did, you don't get to distance yourself afterwards and still be taken seriously as a political commentator. Like, I just don't understand why people's reputations don't take a hit at all. When it's like, well, this guy promised you and told you all this stuff would happen, and none of it happened, but you're still listening to him and believing him. Why?
Not MAGA anymore. So
what do you think happens, Nick? I believe that we need radical change, and I'm not talking about violence or revolution or things like that. I'm talking about the only ways that you can have this kind of radical rethinking of the system.
Yeah, get out.
There's so many what do you think about the Epstein files? What do you think about the accountability? Or do you think that he's broken the system to the degree that we now are basically in a dictatorship light?
No, I have a lot of confidence only because...
You can also use pipes as walls. Oh, you can't spawn block anymore, though, like you used to be able to.
Because I think the Democrats are going to take the House in 26, which I support. I'm telling my people, vote Democrat. We want the Democrats in the House because what they're going to do is they're going to use the oversight powers to bring all the corruption to light. Because I know Republicans will watch this, and when you say, you know, we didn't commit crime, they're going to be skeptical. However, for the sake of argument, let's say the income you made during Biden was ill-gotten. For the sake of example, it's just doesn't hold a candle. It doesn't even come close, doesn't even touch Jared Kushner, Howard Lutnick, Steve Witkoff, Don Jr., Trump himself. It's just a different sport. It's a different game entirely. And I want all that corruption to be revealed. And I think the Democrats are going to do it. I hope they get impeached. I don't think they'll be removed from office, but I think it'll basically drag this administration to a halt. And then in 28, I think there's an opportunity for a clean reset with both.
I feel like you're wrong about Kalinske. He's not on the team, but he's nowhere near as bad as Hassan. In 2024, he was like a left-wing Tim Pool, where he never outright endorsed Kamala, but 95% of his content was pro-Kamala and not just anti-Trump. I don't know if that's true. I don't even believe you, because I tried to look up like him making positive messages about Kamala. There was one time where he was very pro-Kamala, one time. And that one time was when she picked Walz over Shapiro for her VP, because everybody wanted to see the super progressive guy and not the establishment damn Andrew. So they were happy that Walz got picked there. But other than that, I don't think he was very positive on Kamala. And we keep asking ourselves this question: why is it that even as Republicans lose popularity, why aren't Democrats gaining? Why aren't Democrats gaining? Well, the answer is it's not enough to have people that are just willing to attack Trump all day and then not build up your Democrats. It's not enough to do that anymore. We have to be willing to build up our own party. And people like Al Kalinske clearly aren't. In hindsight, do you think Walz was the right choice? I think Walz was good. Based on everything that happened and his performance, everything, I think Walz did a great job. Yeah. I don't know if Shapiro would have been bad or worse or whatever, but I think Walz was fine. For whatever reason why we might say Kamala lost, I don't think it was due to her vice president pick.
It's right and left.
Whenever you talk about Trump, sometimes you explain this like nightmare scenario that revolves around a Vance presidency.
Yes.
What about J.D. Vance being in power scares you so much?
If Trump doesn't have an ideological core, then Vance really doesn't, because Vance is a chameleon. That's not his real name, for openers. Never had a real job.
What is his real name? I've heard this before.
Because Vance is a chameleon. That's not his real name.
Those facts are pointed out in documentation provided by those entities upon request or otherwise publicly available, and were confirmed. Oh, he spent more than 2 decades as James David Hamill. Oh, is that not true then?
What he just said? Openers. Never had a real job. These are all sinecures given to him by Peter Thiel. 6 years ago, he's a never Trumper.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
I think that he's leading people in a very dark direction, and that's ultimately what worries me the most.
Terrible candidate. Idiot if you voted for him. Might be America's Hitler.
I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
Now he's a national conservative, national populist, and so we don't even really know who he is. I mean, to me, this is basically a Manchurian candidate. This is a shell. Damn. And who is the power behind him? It's the oligarchs. It's the little tech oligarchs in bed with the CIA, you know, especially at this fever pitch with AI. I think that's really dangerous. So to me, him being president is just a worse scenario in my mind.
For the uninformed viewer, what is the Palantir JD Vance connection?
Well, Palantir was founded by Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel's very close with David Sachs. JD Vance was given his first job in Silicon Valley by Thiel. Thiel hooked him up with it. You know, the CEO of that company said it was a personal favor to Thiel that I hired him. And then Thiel got him all his jobs at these various venture capital firms, including his own, and then funding JD Vance's venture capital firm. Peter Thiel gave $15 million to Vance when he ran for Senate in Ohio in 22. Peter Thiel secured President Trump's endorsement for him in 22, which basically got him the nomination and the seat. So, I mean, as far as anybody's concerned, Vance owes his entire political career to Peter Thiel, who derives his fortune from Palantir.
And now he's a Catholic like you and me.
Well, he's a convert, so, you know.
Beware the convert.
Yeah. So do you think that Trump's unfulfillment of his campaign promises was a result of him being like compromised by somebody connected to that structure, or do you think he always just never cared?
I don't know that he never cared. I just think that, you know, I'm an idealist. So I think about the ideas and the concepts. Trump is a businessman. And so I think with him, everything's transactional. And I said this in 2024. Trump knew the voters would swallow anything. The voters would not walk away from the table because they were enamored with him.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any.
I've heard you explain the what is the joke idea in reference to Holocaust denial a couple times. What is your response if they do get to the level saying the narrative cannot be challenged? I mean, like, in some ways the narrative can't be challenged, and in other ways the narrative can be challenged. One reason why it appears to be that the narrative can't be challenged is because people aren't legitimately challenging it, right? It's like saying, like, you can't challenge the narrative that the Earth is round. Well, yeah, because we have a ton of information and everything that points to the Earth not being, that the Earth is round? That points to the Earth not being flat, I guess, right? For the Holocaust stuff, we have a ton of information that points to the number of people dead, all the tactics used to kill people, et cetera, right? If you wanted to publish something, or if you had like groundbreaking research or news or some kind of thing that lets you, critically question the Holocaust, I'm sure you could do it. But the problem is nobody does that. They just say like, oh, well, here are the same lazy attacks against the Holocaust that I'm going to wheel out that have been wheeled out for years. And, oh, wow, you're calling me anti-Semitic, or you're saying I can't even challenge the narrative on this. Well, you're not legitimately challenging the narrative. You're just repeating the same tired bullshit talking points that people have said about the Holocaust for years. You're not challenging anything.
Voters, okay? It's like incredible.
So he knew he could break every promise with them in order to fulfill promises for the donor class, which is little tech, the Israel lobby, and Wall Street. The bankers, Tim Mellon, the big asset managers. So I think with him, everything's business. Everything's a transaction. And that's why you can't trust him. You have to do business. And in 24, I said we should all collectively say we're not going to vote unless he makes certain commitments. And not enough people did that. But I mean, that's fundamentally his flaw.
Your critique of this like elite power structure sounds like vaguely anti-capitalist.
It's not anti-capitalist. Capitalism says the capital, large amounts of capital will be held in private hands, which I believe in. I am a capitalist. But I think what is happening is that it's the way that money is used in government. There needs to be a distinct and separate national power that subordinates the money power to it. The problem is the billionaires buy all the elections, buy all the media, control public perception, and so really we're all subsidiary then to the market. So I support capitalism, but it just has to be underneath the nation, underneath the state.
It seems like you have a pretty optimistic perspective on the year 2028.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28.
Kind of keep coming back to this like clean election year. Do you think that's going to be like a renaissance year for outsider candidates and outside media channels like this one?
It can be. I think it certainly can be, because I think there's frustration on the right and on the left. You see even in the primaries on the Democrat side, it's all DSA progressive types that are winning. You ironically have the same frustration on the left with their establishment as we have on the right. And so I think, in 2028, it's going to be a year where there'll be a competitive Republican primary and Democratic primary, and hopefully the people make their voice heard and we get some new options, maybe that reflect the will of the people more.
Yeah. And so what do you think about somebody like Mamdani?
Personally, I don't like him. I don't like some of the things that he said, like, for example, on 4th of July, when he takes the opportunity to sit there with, let's be honest, not a single white person in the room and says, the founding fathers would look down on us, the working people with their dirt-streaked hands against the billionaires. I think it's a little too divisive. I like his energy. I like that he's young. It's ironic. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
What do you think of the idea that capital has to be underneath the state to keep it in check? I mean, didn't the Soviet Union try that? What?
That's rich, buddy. But no, look,
But it
man,
seems pointed at me.
I know, but yeah, but the thing.
Like he was dissing you in that video?
Yeah, a
Like
little bit.
staring down the camera, like, just for you, Nick, you son of a bitch.
People like me.
Yeah.
But what I see is somebody is using government for exactly the purpose that you just said, is to break the oligopoly, to target the anger towards a tiny percentage of the population that has controlled the levers of government from the White House down to the mayor's office in New York City or Peoria, Illinois, to that matter, and even more so as you go further down that chain. And so I look at somebody like Mamdani, and regardless of his delivery, which may be off-putting, particularly from somebody coming from your side, is that he's delivering, man. You know what? I mean, he's really delivering. You know, like I saw somebody going after Mamdani for some of this stuff, and particularly about rent control, you know. And I was like, well, how do you think the middle class was built after World War II and the GI Bill and rent-controlled buildings that created those communities that we were talking about an hour ago?
The GI Bill provides returning soldiers and veterans a range of benefits, including mortgages to purchase homes, loans to go to school, and this really was instrumental in creating the new American middle class.
Created the...
Did you see that Gary Stevenson wrapped up his grift and said, I quit YouTube because I'm feeling a bait burnout? I feel like they're working on a new product or something, and he's going to say that he's like burned out, and then in like a week or two, he's going to say that, you know, like, oh my God, I just want you guys to know that I was completely done with this channel. But after I said I burned out, there was a huge outpouring of love from the community and people who said they didn't want to see the channel go. And then I realized that my work here isn't done and I'm still needed. So we're coming back with a whole new fucking thing that you can subscribe to and you don't have to and blah, blah, blah. And, yeah. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong.
The availability for somebody that was 26 years old, that had a job with the MTA, to be able to live and work in the city and put the kid in a school with the idea that they would be safe walking there and go to a park that, you know, where the water fountains worked. That's what I see him trying to do. I mean, by the way, it's just so tired and, you know, ridiculous. He's a communist, like it's about the communists. Like, who even says that anymore? Nobody, like, you know what? We're just 1981 and, you know, we're watching Rocky V and worried about the communists. You know what I mean?
That's when they unironically are those types of communists, though. Oh, no. Wow.
Rocky IV?
Nice silent clip.
My whole Philly legitimacy was just blown right there. Okay? But it's just kind of, and so I look at somebody like Mamdani, I think, well, he's just talking about good government. Like, what do you think about healthcare? Don't you think that there should be a single-payer system? Don't you think that there should be some
but we're not homogenous enough. Hit up the homogeny line, Nick.
As a right? Because I don't know how you make it in this country and aspire to a middle-class life and be able to afford a, catastrophic event as it relates to your health. I mean, it's over. You're done.
Yeah. Like, I don't support single payer, but I do believe that everybody should be entitled to some minimum level of coverage, catastrophic insurance. So in principle, I agree.
Which is Medicare for all to a certain degree, right? I mean, because that's all the Medicare does right now. But why is that radical?
See, I don't think that's necessarily radical, but
to them, it's because we've been convinced that it's a radical.
Them,
yeah,
those others.
Yeah, no, them. I mean the insurance companies.
Sure.
Yeah. And their lobbyists who control 55% of Congress, regardless of who's in power.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't think that's necessarily the most radical. I think, though, he is with the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. He backs all these DSA candidates. And let's be honest, a lot of them are radical. Like, I saw one of these candidates that just won in New York a couple weeks ago, this Chevalier candidate. There's a picture.
She hates my dad.
Yeah, I know.
She said about my dad.
She had awful things about him.
Yeah,
and she says, I didn't have a napkin to wipe my hands, so I used the American flag.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, I think it's crazy. But like the same way that, I thought a lot of the stuff that some people that got elected in 2016, 2020, even during the Tea Party, kind of movement was, egregious. Again, egregious.
If it's a legitimate rape,
the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
So what do we do?
Crazy statement.
What do we do, Nick?
About a pregnancy, I think.
I mean, for real, what do we do? Can you at least come a little bit to this way?
If you can come a little this way.
I can. Here's where I can come, is this.
Let's
Do you
find
get what
one
I'm
racial
saying
group we can all
about
hate.
the Holocaust thing?
Oh.
And they're called
about
Indians.
that.
Yeah. No, I mean, really.
I do. And listen, here's what I'll say. Now that I'm older, I do think that's
counterproductive. He's going to say
not the best
productive
approach.
All right.
So I agree with you on that. And I see it as I get older, because let's be honest, saying those things when I'm a younger guy, when I'm 18, 20.
Oh, he does use the young guy
you gotta
thing.
think that's just the age.
Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
And a lot of young people think that's funny and everything like that. I think that it also goes with the medium as well. Live streaming, social media, that's just what it rewards. So yeah, I think that people should try to move past some of that.
I'll try. But if you try.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
For real. And as it relates to.
But the issue is that it's not the jokes. It's the issue is the underlying belief. I don't know if Hunter's aware of that or not, but.
When you talk about Israel, Netanyahu, Likud government, what's happening now, what's happened for the past 20 years in terms of whether the funding to Israel, whether you think it is. It's really important that you make a distinction between that and Jews. Because here's the thing, okay? Zoran Mamdani has a higher favorability rating in the United States among Jews than Bibi Netanyahu does. I think 65% of American Jews disagree with the approach that the Israeli government has right now. They don't disagree with you, but they completely turn off when they hear the conflation of Jews, Zionism, Israel, and think automatically anti-Semitism, whether it's fair or not, okay? But you have to understand it. And you have to understand it from a cultural perspective in which the recent history.
Nick doesn't care because Jews are never going to be part of his political movement either. Like, he just doesn't want.
2,000 years
not
of
a thing.
history
He feels like the ethnic interests will never
align.
align.
Jew, of which there is what, 1%, 0.5% of the entire world's population? Because I don't know what it adds to your argument, or what it adds to your argument about Miriam Adelson being able to give $300 million to Donald Trump and commit to giving another $300 million to get her way, and we end up in a war with Iran.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a valid point. I do think, though, that the issue's broader than just Netanyahu.
Oh, maybe. By the way, it obviously Netanyahu has a base within Israel, within the Jewish community here in the United States, with Jared Kushner. You know what I mean? Jared Kushner, who is unelected, not a member of our government, is having as more control over the direction of the everyday lives of American people right now than anybody that I know of. And meanwhile, all he's doing is building a $6 billion private equity fund with the people he is negotiating for. And I always say, look who's paying him, and wondering whose interest that he is advancing. He's getting paid by the Saudis, he's getting paid by the Emiratis, he's getting paid by the Qataris, he's getting paid, go down the list. And for some reason, he is in control, along with Steve Witkoff, who is also not elected by anybody, of deciding whether or not the Straits of Hormuz are going to open up, and whether or not our gas prices are going to go down. It may not matter to the three of us necessarily, an extra $1.60 or 85 cents. But you know what? To 85% of the people that live in America, it means it's the difference between whether or not they're going to be able to pay rent, whether or not you're going to be able to actually put the gas in your car in Montana to drive to your job on the ranch.
Montana.
Well, and here's what I'll say to you, and this is
The
something
ranch?
kind of why I
Just
want
ride
to do
your
this
horse.
interview, is emphasize the message that as far as Jews are concerned in general, I think that it's the same standard that applies to everybody, which is as long as you're patriotic, as long as you believe Americans should be put first by their government, I have no problem at all. And I think that everybody in the country should be treated with dignity and respect and have their civil rights. It's just this acute problem of these people, like you mentioned, like Larry Ellison and Miriam Adelson and Jared Kushner, they're putting some other country before the interest of our own. And that, in principle, is what I have a problem with.
There is going to be some people who watch this and feel like, all right, no take-backsies. And they might feel like you're just kind of trying to moderate, and that now that you've achieved your goal and got a lot of support, you're kind of moderating because your main aim has already been achieved, which is to sort of have a generational run and pop off. So now you're trying to kind of make your way more into the mainstream discourse, but that you'll just go back again into the same sort of reactionary rhetoric once you're back in a number one spot.
Well, I don't even think I'm moderating. And I even told our mutual friend, it's not even a moderation. It's not even an apology. It's clarifying. Because, you know, all along I've been saying this message. It's just that the way that I'm saying it changes and evolves. And I also think how people respond to it changes as well. Because let's be honest, 10 years ago, there was a very different kind of conversation about Israel. You could not mention it in a negative or critical way without being utterly annihilated in politics. We all know that ever since October 7th, that's not the case anymore. So I think that there's sort of something reciprocal happening, which is that people are receiving me differently. And as someone that's growing older and more mature, I'm even representing myself differently. So I wouldn't even call it moderating, just clarifying. People are more receptive and I'm maybe better able to articulate it.
And you think that's because you've kind of gotten older and been able to have like a longer career in media to reflect on different changes in your perhaps brain chemistry and lifestyle?
That's a huge thing. I mean, I know it's 27. I have a very different mentality than I did when I was 20.
What's the main difference, you think?
Just more even keeled. And I think you know too, it's like when you're 20, you're just like a maniac. And then you hit 25 and you're like, all right, you know.
I was a maniac when I was 49. My brain chemistry has definitely changed in the last 7 years too. You know, and I do believe that people can grow and they can change. And I'm not asking you to, and I'm not asking you to say things, but there are certain things that I just hope that you can hear without feeling attacked. That some of the things that you said, whether it's edgelording otherwise, are really hurtful. And then people completely turn off to the idea of being able to listen to you about anything. And then you get dug in more and you're like, go fuck yourself. Like, you know, you can't take a joke kind of thing. And that's not what it is. It's not just wokeism. It's not. It's people being really, really hurt by it. And I accept your apology for all of the mean things you said about me.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I'm on my apology tour. Is that the one thing you did say? You said I was a degenerate crackhead.
Me?
And I have the problem with that, not you.
Me?
Yeah. And
I also said you were cool, though.
Yeah, no, by the way, you said a degenerate crackhead, and you know what? I'm not even mad about that, because I was a degenerate crackhead. I spent more time on my hands and knees smoking anything that even remotely resembled crack cocaine. It's true.
And now you're sober. Yeah. I find it interesting. You also said that you've never drank before.
Right. Yeah, I've never had a drink, never done drugs.
That's because you grew up, you know, with me. You're like, don't be that guy.
I grew up with you too, and I was doing.
Yeah. You're not as smart as he is. My brother never drank. My dad too. And
I was going to ask you, Nick, what kind of prompted your choice to just like be sober for life and never drink?
Well, you know, a big part of it is I had a lot of addiction in my family. You know, my grandfather was an alcoholic.
It's because they're boring people every
suicide.
time. Don't let them convince
died
you
from
otherwise.
An overdose from crack cocaine. My mom, two of her uncles, heroin addicts for their entire lives. And it just devastated my family, devastated both of my parents. And so I know I have that addictive personality and probably have the genetics for it. And not only that, but I like being rational. I like having my sober mind. I think that's
I don't want to ever be
actually
out
a
of my
sacred
mind
thing,
from drugs or whatever they always
to
say.
have unimpaired reason. So the thought of losing control and even being tempted to get into, you know, worse things, I just thought it's just not worth the risk. So it's just never for me.
Well, how much, by the way, sorry, do we have time? Yeah. Is it, how much do you think COVID warped, not just your generation, but everybody? Because I have this theory that there was this thing that broke for us with COVID, and that nobody's really come to terms with how traumatic that was for everyone.
And especially for the younger generations. I think severely less for the older generations, but for the younger people, missing the graduations, missing critical years in school, that's when the socialization happens. That's when you learn to get along. And so you think about how this generation is going to grow up having 2 to 3 lost years, you know, no sports, no school, no extracurriculars, vacations. It's devastating. And we already had a problem with that isolation, social dislocation, loneliness. I can't even imagine. So it's going to be devastating, I think. But that's a lockdown.
So maybe if you're watching this video after this, you know, put your phone or computer away, go outside, make a friend. Just do anything but scroll to the next video. Back in the day during Nickelodeon, they had Go Outside Day.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I feel like we need like one day a week where it's mandated in a tech oligarch sense that no one can go on their phone or use the computer.
Man, I would love that. I mean, that's one thing. Is if we could, the one thing we could all agree on. The way I say it now is you're all carrying around a bag of heroin in your pocket. Everybody is, and it's probably even more dangerous in some ways.
Would either of you guys ever run for office?
Are you asking me for real?
Yeah.
No. I think that politics, the way that my dad engaged in it, and that I'm obviously incredibly biased, is an incredibly noble thing. But that's not where my head is in terms of what I want to do. I want to reach. My whole thing is that forget all of this. I want to reach 1 million people in addiction. I think one of the biggest things about addiction, and one of the reasons why it continues to be this, epidemic, is that we don't talk about it. Is that you don't even talk about it around your dinner table. And what you realize, if you're coming from my particular unique situation, is that everybody comes to me and they tell me their story. And sharing that is like, breaks that cycle of shame. And so I want to reach 1 million people in addiction.
How about you, Nick? Would you ever run for office?
I don't think so, no. Just because I don't think you can fully be authentic when you're running for office because it's
Although
a different
neither
role.
can Nick because
and
he's
I
in
think
the
my
role of being like the head of a
they
political
say,
movement,
according
so
to
it's
the
harder for
Overton
him.
window idea.
Ideas that are inside the Overton window are ideas that are politically safe. The public is ready to accept them.
They say that if you want to change people's opinions and what they consider acceptable, you kind of have to be the first to the punch and maybe considered a bad person or evil or whatever in order to promote your view. And so that just doesn't lend itself to that kind of politics. So I think to protect my own integrity and authenticity of the message, I have to not run for office.
See what we just did? We just made probably the entire audience happy. One half is glad I'm not running. The other half is really glad he's not running.
Well, if not you guys, then is there any candidate or prospective candidate that you feel
What's
like
an inauthentic view Nick has? I mean, I can guess, but I really don't know. I'm just saying that, like, would you expect him to, if he changed his views over time of something, like say fucking Jews or, I don't know, race realism or something, would you really expect him to be able to say that, given that he leads a political movement that identifies closely around these topics? It would be really, really exceptional for him to be able to do that, because now he's threatening his whole political movement by doing that,
Could run in 2028 that would, have a fair shot that y'all support?
Nobody in particular for me. I haven't really been too impressed with who's come out of the Republican Party. So I'm hoping they'll just be somebody we haven't heard of, somebody maybe that hasn't been in office before.
He's voting for Gavin Newsom in 20.
That's right, yeah. Well, if it's Newsom and Vance, I'd certainly think about it.
Yeah.
How about you? Anybody that, creates a twinkle in your eye?
No, I think that there are a lot of people. I mean, I know that you think that you're going to laugh at me, but I personally like Gavin Newsom a lot. I think that he's authentic in those beliefs, whether you agree with them or not.
Does Andrew
Thomas
hate him?
Massey's principal stand as it relates to the Epstein files was incredibly courageous.
Do not let the Senate muck this bill up. I am sorry if one of your billionaire donors is going to get embarrassed because he went to Rape Island.
And that's why he's not going to be
Rape
congressman
Island,
anymore.
damn.
But that's why, he could potentially make a really strong national candidate.
And you guys think America will exist in a post-Epstein capture freeway?
Will America exist?
Yeah, will America survive the current power structure's stranglehold on the media, the political system, and all public affairs?
I don't know. I think AI is going to really be transformative. It's interesting. Nobody seems to be talking about that.
Transformative in what sense? Like for bad?
Concentration of power. That's the single biggest. And you know what? I'm actually on the liberal side on this with Anthropic over the, let's say, because there's this battle between these effective altruists, effective accelerationists, and I really am nervous about what's going to happen, especially in the next 4 years, because they're racing towards this artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, and that, without a doubt, is going to be the single biggest influence on the country, and so I'm really worried about that.
And what about that concerns you? Is it surveillance?
It's the concentration of power in the hands of whoever controls it. Whichever firm is the one to develop ASI, that could confer dictatorial-like powers upon the CEO of that company. So whether that's Sam Altman or it's Dario, if the artificial intelligence is aligned with its creator, that person will become the most powerful person in the history of mankind on
It's almost
that
an
day.
inherent truth, in my opinion, what he just said, is that the greatest leap in human evolution is going to happen within our lifetimes. AGI, let alone superintelligence is everything that we think about the way in which we exist in the world completely changes. And I don't think that that's in any way hyperbole. And if you listen to the people that are developing these technologies right now, they are the most alarmist.
I think AI will probably, most likely, sort of lead to the end of the world.
If you want to know what life's like when you're not the apex intelligence, ask a chicken.
And now, by the way, I think that there's an enormous possibility for incredibly beneficial things to society, like being able to cure cancer. I just think of this one thing. Everything that AI is built on is ours. Belongs to you, and you, and you, all the way back through the human civilization. That's what they're stealing from us. And they're putting it into the hands of literally a handful of people. All of that human knowledge and the value that comes from it. And I think that that's ours. So any AI that is developed, particularly that goes to HEE, it should be communal. It should be shared in the not just the beneficial offshoots of it, but the actual money of it should be shared.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's like nuclear bombs, but it's also a commodity at the same time. The weapons potential, the economic potential, I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And I hope on some level that liberals win that argument because, what Trump is doing with the Pentagon, Anthropic, and OpenAI, the way they're handling it is so reckless and sloppy and just honestly unbelievable. So we need some adults in the room on that one.
Well, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you guys for coming. You guys have any final questions you want to ask to each other, or maybe a message you want to give to the American people?
I still believe in America, and I truly believe in these conversations. And I think everyone that's watching would think that I would not want to sit down with Nick. And this, I guess, what I'm getting at with you is that I hope you see the humanity in me, and so when the way that you talk in the future takes that into consideration. And what I'll do is I'll see the humanity in you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a great conversation, and I think that we have to come together on the things that we agree on, which is, for example, that we love the country, we both believe in America, we both want the country to succeed, and I like what you said, that we see the fundamental humanity in each other. And I think that especially in the events of the last year, the killing of Charlie Kirk, you realize that's actually not something that people on both sides share. I think there's people on the right and the left that don't see the humanity in the other side. And so maybe that's the new consensus, or that's where we can come together, is on the basis that, we disagree on fundamental issues. And even sometimes it gets heated and we yell at each other, but that we do ultimately want the best for each other. We love each other. We want the country to succeed. And I think that's a starting point for any solution and any conversation.
All right, American brothers. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. Good job, guys. After interviewing Hunter and Nick about a variety of contentious topics, not limited to, but including the Iran war and ongoing conflict in the Middle East, I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe I should just go. Maybe I should apply for a visa from the IRGC and fly to Tehran to go to a Death to America rally, after which I'll scour the scene to find the underground culture of the city and figure out how unveiled Tehran street folks actually feel about the government, and eat some great food and see some sights while I'm at it. So I did just that with the help of the OG Vice News crew. If you guys want to see our extensive coverage captured in Iran, go to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/channel5. If I had it my way, everything would be free. But hiring fixers, renting equipment, traveling across the world and fighting lawsuits against powerful people is very, very expensive and time-consuming. So we need your support. Channel 5, as mentioned, is a totally independent crowdfunded newsroom. We can only make money 3 ways: merchandise, limited ad reads, and of course, Patreon, where a sizable army of real ones pay $5 a month to get access to an entire catalog of uncensored, early exclusive, and crazy-ass content. So if you want to support us and see more, again, it's www.patreon.com/channel5. I'm going to put the link in the pinned comment and description box of this video. Have a great day.
Channel 5 live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine.
Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News.
Channel 55. We don't fuck with custers. And 5 is the best number.
Wow. Good morning, all. This is Christian, the Michigan House State Lead. I'm coming at you from the great city hall of Lansing, the capital of Michigan. As we get our canvassing operations on the ground, I already have people moved in, we've begun training, and we have picked up our voter registration forms. They can be dropped off at any fire department, but more than anything, we want to go door to door, hear what people's issues are, hear what they really care about, and make sure they are ready to vote in this upcoming primary. There's never been a more important time, and we are looking forward to getting started.